I think the last couple episodes have just been like a trip down memory lane almost.
Yeah.
Jordan Dowdy, welcome to Easy Talk. I appreciate you.
How's it going?
This is kind of like Two Pros No, but neither one of us are competing anymore. Actually, no, you're still competing in jiu-jitsu, so I guess it's like 1.5 pros no now.
2 wise pros now, right?
No, you give me too much credit, sir.
Yeah.
I was looking forward when I reached out to you for doing this episode because it was kind of like a wash of nostalgia. It was kind of like bringing back. I know it's been like 5 or 6 years, but it didn't feel like that long ago.
Yeah. So time is flying even much faster now. You're younger than me, so unfortunately, it's going to go even faster for you. But I had someone once explain it to me, like when you first started driving, and you're going to make that right hand turn. You're like, oh, I don't have the time, and you can make it 3 times. Now you go up there. That's how fast time is going now. It's already July. It just turned 38. It's crazy to think of that after being in a competition window when everybody's kind of closes a bit. It's been very interesting, but I was glad to see that I watched a couple of these. I don't have much time to watch podcasts or listen because of work and all that stuff, but I caught a few of them and subscribed them, which y'all should do. It helps the channel a lot more. And, if you're listening, you're doing it, you're just creeping. So,
well, I will say you're not wrong. First of all, I didn't realize how much when we did this, dude. I did this. I called Matt and I was like, "Hey, I want to do a podcast." And I was like, "What, a year ago, right?" And here we are today. But I didn't know anything about any of this stuff, and I wish I probably would have done a little bit more due diligence. Would have saved me some money. We wouldn't have made as many mistakes as we did when we first started. But it has definitely been a growing and learning process. It reminds me a little bit of like when I first started fighting. Because we had done the podcast Two Pros No before, but when you want to talk about like what we did in terms of like production and setup, I mean, we would just basically be like, let's get a guest, let's turn on the Zoom, and we'll call them on no, not even Zoom, Skype.
Yep.
And thank God for Matt back in the day too. He was our producer.
Hey, I just showed up and went to Skype, and Matt set it all up, and yeah, then we just talked our shit.
How did I talk you into doing Two Pros No?
I don't remember. I think we just kind of jokingly said we should do one day, and then I said, yeah, we could call it Two Pros No. And I think you hit me up that afternoon like, hey, dude, we should do it. And I was like,
that sounds fun.
I was like, okay.
We were going down the list of like some of the guests we had. I mean, we had Jesse Finney for our second episode. We had Luis Pena. We had Dwayne Diggs. We had like a Ashley Cummins, which was hilarious because the Ashley Cummins episode, like I was in my bedroom and Ashley was in the living room because we were roommates at the time, and I was like, "You want to be on the podcast?" She's like, "Do you want me to do it like right next to you?" I was like, "No, we gotta make it look like we're not in the same area."
Bobby
Brent's. Oh man, we broke St. Louis MMA for 3 or 4 fucking months.
That was a race to the bottom.
Dude, that was insane. When we conceived the Golden Onion, we didn't even call it the Golden Onion at first.
No, Bobby did it. He's like, you all should do because we were doing some award or something, and he goes, you guys should do an onion for the biggest loser.
We were doing the Knuckle Junkies stuff.
Was that
remember?
What it was?
Yeah. It was like the annual Knuckle Junkies. Remember when we were in the garage?
Yeah.
And we were doing best KO, best submission, and all this other stuff. And then Bobby was like, "You should do best douchebag or like worst fighter." And we're like,
he actually called it a Golden Onion.
Yes,
that's where that came from. And
Bobby Brents, you fuck.
Well,
he's the reason.
Let's face it. Everybody else didn't want to put their names behind it, but they wanted us to do it because they all had names to nominate. So y'all are blamed too.
Well, what's interesting about a car crash is no one wants to be involved, but everyone will stand by and watch.
Yeah, that's right. Look at their phone.
You're not wrong. But I remember when we did it, we didn't even think that a lot of people watched the podcast. That was the thing. We were like what's it gonna hurt? We'll do it. It'll be fun. And then I think when we had the initial vote for who should be who are some less than reputable individuals that should be on this golden list of pure shit. We were surprised by how many people nominated people. Actually, that didn't surprise me. What surprised me was the nominees. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ.
It was like crowdsourcing a subscriber list for us, It was meant to be funny, and it didn't turn out to be funny. No,
Dude.
I mean, it's funny now. I kind of laughed back then, but everybody took it way too damn serious.
You know what? In hindsight, with the maturity and the knowledge that I have now, would I do it again? Yes.
Yes, I was gonna say, better be yes. We can do it
Yes.
now.
No. Ooh. Who would you know, dude? Listen, one of the things I've been
would I
doing with this
nominate
podcast is
now?
I've been fostering a lot of goodwill.
Yeah.
I've been fostering a lot of good vibes. I'm trying to be the glue for STL MMA right now. I want to just make sure everyone's like happy and
Well, yeah. Now that I'm older, it
doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. There's one person I put on it for sure, but like they're forever on it.
Who?
You know,
Jesse?
You know, yeah, it's Jesse. Of course it is. So
I think he'd probably be on there for a lot of people as
yeah,
well.
exactly.
I told you this off camera though. Here's what I'll say about him. I have to say that I've learned a lot from him in the past couple of years, both how to do some things and how to not to do other things, right? Do I think that our history with Jesse is yours is a little different than mine? That's the issue. I can only speak for myself on this one, Jordan. Like I told Mop, like I told a plethora of people, I always trusted Jesse to do what was in his best interest, and I just try to make sure that my interests align with his. I think what the mistake that we made when we were younger was we thought we were more valuable to them than we really were.
Well, the thing is, you can mend bridges, and that's fine. I never. What about the year I was 32 in my prime and was shelved for a year over some bullshit? I don't get that back. You can mend bridges. I mean, you can have a falling out and mend bridges, but you didn't lose anything in your competitive window, did you?
No.
I did, and then compound that
Well,
with
truth
COVID.
be told, I did. Oh, yeah, I was going to say,
Compound that
with
with COVID, I
yeah.
lose 2 years.
Terribly sorry to interrupt the content that you're enjoying right now, but if you've been watching our content for the past couple of months, you realize that Easy Talk is a brand new podcast. We're genuinely trying to figure this thing out as we're going. Some growing pains for sure. If you are genuinely enjoying this content, we feel very humble in that, but we would like to ask that you would also subscribe and like to the channel, simply because it does help us in the algorithms and ultimately to grow. So take a second. I'd really appreciate it. And on with the show. Yeah,
So my thing was, it's more, I was told I made too much money, 800 and 800 at one point. I was not going to affect your mortgage. I was doing commentary. I was doing Knuckle Junkies. Steve Smith had died, so Rumble Time was gone. There was no promotion. My coach, Steve, had a kid.
Steve Knoble.
Yeah, Steve Knoble, he had a child, and he went off and was doing the family thing like he should have. So I had no manager. There was no management in this area
I
other
thought
than some
Jeremy
other
Johnson
coach.
managed you.
He did later on. He helped me with it.
Okay, after this moment.
But so it became, here's your fight, here's your contract, we need both. So no contacts outside of this area. My coach that always did my stuff was gone. And then these guys that I'd always worked with and liked, they're here like, hey, we'll help you. And, when I look back on it, all I ever wanted was a development curve. And now I see guys selling 200 tickets and getting easy fights. I just wanted a development curve.
Can I make a comment though?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're looking back, when you say that what you want was a development curve, are you? I'm gonna kind of steel man this a little bit. Are you sure that's what you wanted, Jordan?
Yeah, I just wanted a fight every 3-4 months, and let's progressively work up to that next level.
Yeah, but you were. I only know this because I remember the conversations we would have. You and I were very similar in our mentalities and our approach in the game, right? Mm-hmm. We were very much the case of you thought you were the best at your weight class, and I thought I was the best at my weight class. And we were very much, and I say this as like a compliment, because I've met very few fighters that are truly like anyone, anywhere, anytime, and you were one of them. You fought the who's of people, didn't matter what your record was, as long as their record was better, and they were like, something to be gained from it, climbing the mountain, so to speak. But I would reckon our early years were high risk, high reward.
Yeah,
we would take the risks. So that's why Shamrock loved us, because when to this day, I know for a fact that one of the things Jesse and Rob can say about me is that I'm the easiest guy to work with. I had never said no to a single fight. The only time I ever said no was because I would come back and be like, the record sucks. Like it's not worth it. Like I'm not gonna cut weight for this one. You know what I mean? Like I need a challenge. Come back with someone better. I never picked up the phone and said, "Ooh, that guy's too tough. Like come back with someone weaker." Right? But what I'm trying to say though is, so you say you want that development curve, but if I could be honest with you, back in the day, you were like me. You were like, dude, anybody, anytime, any place. And I think what happened was we were just driven by ego. We were young. We thought we were the shit. And don't get me wrong, we were good. I'll give myself credit. I'll give you credit. We were good. It's not like we were shitters. And that was kind of a part of the problem. It's like, because we would win some fights, so it would kind of build that ego. And then when we would lose a fight, it was like so detrimental. I know about you, but when I first lost my first split decision loss to Demetrius Wilson, dude, I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is
Yeah.
insane. You know what I mean? But I never blamed Jesse or Rob. I did blame one judge, but I never blamed Jesse or Rob. The reason I bring that up is I think you have something when you say like they took a year out of your prime. I agree. But where I have to push back a little bit is when you say you want to the development curve, because I implore you to look back. I bet you wouldn't say that if you were really thinking hard about it. You were like anyone, anytime, any
I wanted
place.
the path up because I was on less time than everybody else. How old are you now?
I'm now 31.
31. Okay, so I got held out of a contract year when I was 32.
Yeah.
32 to 34 is your prime year. And all I ever did was really just kind of ask for activity and to be next. And when I was in the matching rights and they weren't giving me what I wanted, I tried to go somewhere else. Was perfectly available to do in the matching rights, and then I got dicked around there. I have all the documents for it. And I even had to hire a lawyer to deal with this. I'm 32 years old, working full-time and trying to compete on the side. And I get a lawyer for this?
Yeah.
I mean, I never understood where that came from on their end. Like, here's what I want, guys. Oh, we can't do that, but here's something similar. Oh, okay. At least it's a plan. One time I was tired of waiting. I knew if I didn't get on, it was going to be till March. And then I ended up being like, I just need a fight, guys. I need a fight. I ended up fighting for free. I had to get a fight before the year was out because I couldn't wait. I was in grad school. I was working full time and I was training full time. My timeline was a little different.
Yeah.
So, and I did all three of those things at once. How? I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
But it didn't have to go that way. And like you said, they weren't friends, but I thought we were on good terms. Where at least even if we had a disagreement, here's how I see it, and we have a phone conversation, not a complete like block off.
Have you talked to Rob or Jesse?
No, I got blocked from everything.
You have them blocked, or
No,
you are blocked?
I was blocked.
Oh, you're blocked.
Rob doesn't block me. I think they were trying to play good cop, bad cop. I want to think Rob is a good dude. Because here's full credit. I remember I had someone fall out on a fight at weigh-ins. And that night, he was up all night, and he found someone and had them bus in.
You talking about Rob Donica?
Yeah,
you
Rob
had an
did.
opponent
Yes.
fall out night of weigh-ins,
Yeah,
and he
full
was still
credit. Yeah, he saved it. I had tickets sold. He fucking delivered it. I cannot deny that.
When
He
was
did
this? Your pro or
No,
amateur?
it was as an AMI when I was
Okay.
trying to, after I came back from being injured for a bit, I was trying to, get a handful of them in a row. And yeah, completely delivered. River City Casino, had a great time. That was a great venue. That was a great time. And, I thought we were like business partners in it. Not like I had any stock in there, but I'm like, as this brand grows, I want to be a part of it. I want to be on the commentary. I want to, whenever I was writing for Knuckle Junkies, I was helping promote that with the stories. I wanted to be invested in the brand.
You did some post-fight interviews with them, because I remember back in
Yeah.
the day we would both do that. I remember you would interview
So-
me and I would interview you sometimes.
I'm like, so what validated this response from you? All I did was ask. Like, it's not like I came at it aggressively. I'm just like, hey, because here's the thing. The game has changed a lot right now, and we can get into that. But there wasn't the management we had now. Now Sean's in there. We all have a door. There was a door that wasn't there before. Wasn't there for my prime.
When
just
you
couldn't.
when you say a door, do you mean to the upper brass of the UFC? You have someone's ear now
To get in. So
What does that mean,
Like
though,
a
to get in?
management company. So these guys hold all the doors. They have all the contacts. So when
Jordan.
Iridium contacted Sean,
Thank you.
to
So
get him in-
Iridium is who you mean by these guys?
Yeah, and to this day, I still believe they brought him in to lose. Because it was
Sean
short
Wilson?
notice. We cut 30 pounds in less than a week.
Was that the Terrence McKinney one?
Yeah, so
For-
that avenue was not there. So there was no protection for a guy like me at my age. Because who was I going to have be my manager? Somebody from another gym locally here?
I don't mean to interrupt, but I will say one thing. Can we just take a step back, and can you give a little bit more nuance to what you're saying? Because me and you,
Mm-hmm.
we have history and we know, but there might be someone listening to this who has no idea what you're talking about.
So
So-
think of it like a closed network. If you're in a small place with the small same context, like a small town, nobody's moved out of that town to go to the big town, to go to the big company that can give you the income you want, the opportunities you want. You're all in a small town and everybody talks shit on each other. Everybody knows whose house you hang out at. That's what the scene was 10 years ago. We didn't have that. We had a few people get to the UFC, like Lance Benoist and there's countless other ones that kind of made it up there. But whenever the game changed, the high level management companies like Iridium and Sucker Punch, they're there. They have the rosters now. They have the ends. They can get people in on a call. They're the first people they call when the fight drops out. Do you have anybody ready that can come up? And then these guys get a 3-fight deal on a short notice, right?
Evan Elder, Garrett
Yeah,
Armfield.
and those guys deserve it. But that path was not there for us at that time. So back then, it was about get to a certain level, 5-0, 6-0, and try out for the Ultimate Fighter if you can.
Or get some viral finish that got someone's attention that would get something.
So my path there had to be different. I knew that because of my age. So I didn't have all the time in the world. And when I started asking, like, just for fights, it was very frustrating to me because I thought we were in this together. It's not like I didn't sell tickets. I sold tickets. I promoted the brand. I made weight. I performed. And if I wasn't on the show, I was there supporting it or working it in some way. So what happened there? All I can think about is it just came to the feelings. It was baffling. And there's more detail to get into it, but there's really no point in doing it anymore. It's done and over. I just wish I had that year back because I lost another one with COVID. So when I came back from COVID, training for a fight, opponent falls off. Everybody in my peer group stopped training or got fat or they were getting injured. And then all of a sudden I just didn't like it anymore. I didn't like the sport that much anymore because I was putting so much into it.
And you were getting so little out.
Yes. And then coming off of COVID, that was a really strange year because, everybody had problems with COVID. Like mental stuff, like, all of a sudden you're not going to work or job change or income. I had to put my dog down that I had in college. Had to put him down. The family had to move from our family household, and I had to help my parents, like, with this house that they had bought. So we're fixing up this house. Then COVID hits, and then I just came off of a fight that I should not have lost. So I had a concussion. I had some real problems with that for a while. And then after that, I'm going to the gym one day, and I'm walking down the stairs, and I get a text message, and a buddy of mine's obituary pops up. One of my best friends from college. He died. Like, he had some health issues, but I thought he came over it, and he was out in Cincinnati. And I got this on my way to the gym. I didn't know anything was wrong. Like, he never said anything. The friend group that they play games online, he never said anything. It was just a big surprise. All that hits at once within a year. And so I had a lot of things to deal with that I just couldn't cope with. So training was my outlet for that. But I remember when most of that had passed, I was like, now that COVID's over, let me find a fight. And they found somebody on NFA. It wasn't the opponent I wanted, but it was who was available. And the whole time I'm getting ready for this fight, I'm like, my buddy used to drive up and surprise me. He would just show up in the crowd. I knew that wasn't going to happen this time. So this one's hard on me because it was such a surprise. But
Jordan, take your time.
So, after you are done training, that guard is down, right? Like all that angst, that shit that you carry in your day, your guard's down. So you're more emotionally ready and charged, right? And I'd be driving home at night just like, he's not here. He's not going to ask me when it is. Not going to say when the tickets are. I'm not going to get a call. I'd be in the shower after training just like, God, Paul is gone. Like, he's gone. And so I'm in the back, like, warming up for this fight. I feel good, but I'm just like, my buddy's not here. And that stress of, I thought having that fight, walking back out after getting a concussion and my buddy dying, I thought that would fix everything. Like, I'm going to go face these demons as fucking hard as it is. I didn't sleep all week. I'm going to go collect this W real quick and prove some shit to myself and it'll be over. And I thought it was. And then I was training for another fight. And it was at the LFA, and they kind of play that game where you don't have a fight till 2 weeks out. And so I'm like, cool, I'm ready. I'm fucking ready. So I get this name, and as soon as I get this name, I'm like, I can beat this dude. And I'm like, but I started freaking out. I'm like, I don't want to fucking do this. And Drew and Mop are like, dude, you'll beat his ass. And I go, I get it. There's something off here.
When you say you don't want to do this, you mean that fight or
the stress of it all? The stress of it all.
A full camp.
Yeah, so
cutting weight.
I knew something was up because that was the first time I'd ever gotten something and was like, nope. And it didn't even have nothing to do with the opponent.
Or just how you were feeling.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I went and I had to go talk, see a buddy of mine was a sports psychologist, and it turns out like with all the stuff that had happened to me from the contract issues to my buddy dying and everything that happened in COVID and moving and the job not having that for a bit and just the stress of everything, I'm filling out this paperwork at this psychologist or a therapist, whatever you want to call them. And they ask all these things like, were you sexually abused? No. So I'm like checking off all these devious things that have happened to wonderful people. And I get in there and I'm talking to him, and his name's Jamie. And I'm like, Jamie, I kind of feel like a little bitch being here. He's like, what are you talking about? I go, the things that are on this form that people have had done to them. I mean, I've had a great life. Like, my parents were great to me. Um, I kind of feel like a little bitch being here. He goes, no, no, no. He goes, trauma's trauma. Your trauma may be little t, but it's not big T, but you're dealing with something. So the way it was described to me
May
is,
I ask real quick, if you don't mind? When you say you feel like a bitch, it's not, you didn't feel like a bitch because you were seeing a sports psychologist or a
No.
therapist. You felt like a bitch because when you were filling out this informative paperwork, all of these things seemed very egregious to what you felt like was ailing you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, I don't deal with any of this stuff. I should be able to handle this on my own. Not talking to a therapist is a good thing if you need to. There's instances in your life, especially when things change, that you kind of need help processing something. And whether you have good friends or not, it's not really a sign of weakness. You just need some perspective because you get caught up in the mania of the moment. Uh, but all those things that happened to me, and I hadn't processed them in a certain part of my brain, hadn't filed them away as, happened, let's gain the experience. So anything that would happen would immediately like hit all of that at once. He said it was like a pipeline to your brain and it was jammed. And so I'm like, cool, we'll get this sorted out and like I'll be back. And then I left it because in my mind I have 9 wins and I always say 10. If I get 10, that's a fucking legacy. No one can ever say shit. I got 10 wins, right? And I thought that was going to define my career and legacy. And I left that going, I don't even need to do that anymore.
Mm.
Because
just from one session with him?
No, 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 no. I went for a while. But okay. What it came down to was, we had to deal with that stuff that had happened to me. But he kind of got into why I do what I do. And a lot of it was to prove myself. And this went as far as a junior Olympics thing in 5th or 6th grade when we ran the relay race, right? We were good. The day of the race, they had me line up left-handed to catch it left-handed instead of right-handed. Never practiced that. The guy that hands it off to me catches it and drops it. It falls, I pick it up, and we lost because of it. I didn't practice that side. And I caught so much shit from that. And from there on, I was like, fuck all of you. I'm going to do sports where I can prove myself. I'm going to work harder than all of you, so there's no doubt. And that's what drove me for all of this. It went all the way back to that. That's how all this started. So whenever, when you start fighting, maybe you didn't have the same thing I did. People that are scared for you, nervous for you, go, well, we don't think you can do that. Are you sure? And I'm like, okay, thank you. Like, you told me I couldn't do it. Now you're buying tickets because I'm fighting at the Scott Trade Center. So thank you.
The reason I started fighting was purely happenstance. My mom had just passed away, and UMSL, the university that I was going to, I was studying finance and accounting. It didn't have a wrestling team. And at the time, I had a scholarship to go wrestle at University of Central Missouri, but it was all the way in Kansas City. So when my mom was diagnosed with cancer, she was diagnosed with not diagnosed with cancer, but she had cancer, but they told her like, hey, this is it. Like, there's nothing we can do. You got roughly 8 months to a year. And I'll never forget this day, Jordan. She sat me and my brother down. I was like playing on video games, and Andy was just like chilling, maybe talking to a girl, and my mom walks in and she's like, hey, I need you guys to close things. And she never was like somber and calm. She was always like a firecracker, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So me and Andy were like kind of like, oh shit, like, well, what's going on? So we sit down and she tells us, and there's some moments in your life, and I'm sure you have them as well. You'll never forget and you remember in perfect clarity. Mm-hmm. So I had a really tough decision to make. Do I go to the University of Central Missouri and miss this year of my mom's life, or do I go to UMSL and basically say, okay, I'm done wrestling because UMSL doesn't have a wrestling team? And at the time, it was a very difficult decision. Yeah. I chose not to wrestle anymore, and then I went to UMSL. But looking back, there were like 4 or 5 decisions I've made in my life that have truly changed the trajectory of who I am today. That was one of the best decisions I ever made for my life, because that last year that I had with my mom were some of the fondest memories I ever have with any human being ever. And because I didn't pursue wrestling in college, that's how I actually Elvin got me to
Yeah.
go to CMAA and meet JD Amato because he's like, hey, if you're not going to wrestle, you should try jujitsu. It's kind of like wrestling. I had no idea what WEC, UFC, any of that stuff was. It was just like wrestling to me, right? This was like early years. We're talking about like 2010, 2011 for me, right? So like the UFC was just starting to pick up some steam. It was like just after the Ultimate Fighter with Forrest Griffin and Stephen Bonner. So that was like when the trajectory was starting to change for them. But before then, I had no idea what it was. Alvin brought me in to go in, and I remember the first day I met you because you guys with Steve Knogle, Sal, Ray Grindstaff, your brother, like you guys were down there training too, and I was like, oh shit, like this is like a gym, you know what I mean? I was like the first time I met any of you guys, and like you guys were telling me like, oh, we're over here in Granite City, but like we're sister gyms, and that's how I started in MMA. Was basically like Alvin was seeing me, and I was just like down in the dumps because one of the things I didn't think about was after my mom died. I had made the decision to go to UMSL to be there for that year. But then after she died, I didn't have the possibility of like leaving to go wrestle. Like it was like, well, I'm gonna be here for 4 years, but I did this for 1 year, right? So like I had that year with my mother. It was amazing. She passes. So then I'm left. Brother moves out. Father's a truck driver. So like I mean, I went from having like a full home to no one at the home, like Monday through Friday. I would leave alone, come back home alone. And I was just that was some of the darkest times of my life mentally. And it was fighting, it was Elvin, it was coming in there and telling me to come do jujitsu and all this other stuff that kind of reinvigorated that passion in me. I like to think that I fought because I'm a fighter. But the reason I went into the gym was because I was like a wounded animal.
I think that's how it finds a lot of us. That's why the worst thing to do is to sit at home if you're wounded. There was a buddy of mine recently just went through some stuff, and I'm like, go back to the gym. Like he hadn't been there in a while. Well, I haven't been there, so they'll still accept you as you are. Go in there.
The gym's been there.
You know, you got to get your mind right. You got to get. If you sit there and dwell, it's not going to help. And I used it as my medicine because when I graduated college and I was working a full-time job, I'm sitting there going, I heard you say this on Mop's thing when you were talking about you went in and told your wife that she was your girlfriend at the time you're going to quit. You went through the same thing I did where you're sitting at a desk when you were sitting at home in this case. And I'm like, this isn't what I thought this was going to be. Like, I'm not afraid to work. I'm not afraid of being a grown-up, but
I hated my life.
Yeah, it's like I hate every fucking part of this. These people take it, and I still have aspects of that because I'm back in the corporate world now where they take things much more seriously than me. And
I don't think it's the corporate world because I'm still in the corporate world and I've never been happier. I think it's toxic environments. And I always tell people the beauty of capitalism, true capitalism, is vote with your fucking feet in every aspect of your life. If you don't like your job, don't bitch about it, leave. If you don't like your coworkers, don't bitch about them, leave. Find greener pastures. Stop being a pussy. It took me until I was like 25, 26. I was sitting down at my desk and I was like, I had just gotten off a meeting where they had just told me that I was going to get like another $60 million of responsibilities on my portfolio for no extra pay. Yep. And I was just like, what am I doing? Why do I hate life? Like, do I hate life because I hate life, or am I allowing people to make me hate life? So I didn't look at it like it's the system, it's this, it's that. It's three people that are making decisions unbeknownst to me that are causing me to hate my life. Can I do anything about those three people? No. The only thing I can do is something about myself. And I got the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
And it was the best decision one of the best decisions I ever made in my life.
It's crazy how that works because it's their life. It's so important to them, and then shit just rolls downhill. But it's what were we talking about before that? We're about what drives you?
No. We were talking about like how we got into fighting because you were saying that like because of this one Junior Olympics race, you dropped the baton, you guys lost the race, and then you were like, fuck team sports.
That carried over into everything for me. High school, playing sports in high school, just anything I ever did, I just attacked it. And then in college, I dated a girl from Hillsboro, and she's like, yeah, I'm good friends with Matt Hughes. And I was like, okay. I just took it at face value.
Who's that?
Then I go up to their house.
Did you know who Matt Hughes was?
Yeah. My cousin was the biggest Matt Hughes fan. Like, I didn't watch it like that. But I go up to their house, and we're having dinner, and he walks in with his wife. And I'm like,
that's kind of cool.
Oh, shit. Like, she wasn't joking. And so I always paid attention to it, but I knew it wasn't something I can do till after school. And then after school, I was working in the job I hated at the time. And Just got out of a really crappy relationship, and my brother Jake had found the gym in Granite City, and I'm like, I'm going with you tonight. And I went down there, and I'm like, I'm probably pretty decent at this. Didn't know shit, had athletic ability, stepping with the wrong foot, and I'm like, oh shit, this needs to be fixed like immediately, because I thought it was some tough shit, because I lifted weights and I was pretty strong, and I was there ever since. It gave me something to shoot for that wasn't toxic. It gave me goals. It gave me structure. It gave me, at the time, purpose, which you can. The biggest thing is a lot of these guys tie their identity to this, and that's why the highs are so high and the lows are so low. And at a certain point, that is beneficial. But
did you not tie your identity to it?
I did.
So did I.
So as I started to remove myself from that, because one of the things seeing the therapist did is I always felt like it wasn't good enough. So people would be like, well, you did this. I'm like, yeah, I did. That's cool. It was never enough. It was always the next thing I needed to do to prove that I was worth it, that I worked hard, and, you could do this too. Nothing special about what I do. I just put in the work. Nobody thought I could do it. So I'm going to do this out of pride and spite, and because I need the medicine of keeping me out of my day-to-day. Because if I was just to go home and just play video games or do something else, that would just not have been good for me. I needed to be active. I needed to be moving. I needed the endorphin rush. But it was more about the competition and just being around other people like me. Because in the corporate world, even now, I'm unique in the building I'm at. They think I'm strange, and that's okay, because they're all strange to me. They'll have a Diet Coke for breakfast. I'll have a tea, and they're like, oh, you're so healthy. And I'm like, yeah. Yeah. And I'll meal prep, and they're like, oh, what are you having? And I'm like, I got 3 pounds of ground beef from Aldi for $16. I had the rice, and you spent $15 on your little sandwich from Panera. Whatever, so yeah. I'm trying to save money and be healthier. But in a world that there's not many areas I can fit in and be my true self, I can be a chameleon, and I can sit here, have a professional conversation. I can go down and talk with people, that you would call white trash or in the ghetto, and I can get along with them just fine. I can go to a high-level business meeting, go with them just fine. The only place I could really let it all out was at the gym, and I could just be me.
I found the same kind of reverence for the gym as well, because it was just like the outlet of the day, all the frustrations that would build up. I always felt kind of similar to you, to where like I didn't fit in, and I actually, it wasn't fighting where I fit in the most. It's in the realm of competition. And the reason I would get so frustrated in life is because I was young and I had no power. So I always felt like people that didn't have the right to tell me what to do were telling me what to do. And it was just like, so frustrating when I would go to school, and these professors that never did dick with their lives are telling me that, I need to do this, that, or the other. And then I would go to work, and these people that never, really amounted to anything or strived for any greatness, they're telling me what to do. And I always felt like I was just so, it wasn't the fact that they were telling me what to do, it's the fact that I never respected them or their body of work. Yep. I would find solace in the gym, so I always assumed, I correlated that with, well, maybe I'm just, like you were saying, like, I got to do what I got to do in the office, and then I get to be my real self when I'm out. It wasn't until I started to become what you would call like your own boss, or like when I built my first business, that I was like, oh, it's not fighting, it's competition that I love. I'm just a competitive guy. If we go to the urinals, I'm trying to piss longer than you. If we're eating, I'm going to show you that I can have one more sushi roll than you, right? That's how I'm wired. Business, in a lot of ways, has been the best thing that's ever happened to me personally, because it's like unfettered competition. Who am I competing against? Everybody. Who am I trying to beat? Anybody in my industry, anybody who's competitive with me. And the nice thing about that is I don't have to cut weight for that. I don't have to like go up to a physical place for that. But the bad thing about that is that's 24/7. Yeah. There's no season. There's no nothing. It's like we're always on. And if they're hitting the ground running, I got to be matching their pace. And so far, I can tell you that my mental health, like me as an individual, I've never been healthier. My lifestyle has never been better. My relationships have never been sweeter and kinder. Like, my wife told me, ever since we had our daughter, and ever since I started just doing whatever it is that I wanted to do and not what I had to do, that I'm just a better person. And I do agree with her. I notice it with my interactions with people. I'm not as quick to anger. Matt might laugh at that one, because like he sees the business side of me, but like in my interpersonal life, I'm more patient, I'm more honest, I'm more transparent, I'm more empathetic, I'm more sympathetic. Like I've just maybe it's maturity. That's the other
It
factor.
does
I'm
come
getting
with age
older.
because I've noticed that with me. Things that usually would have made me angry or I would have died on that hill to fucking argue with you.
Yes.
Now I'm just like,
I
oh,
don't
that's how you
care.
see it. Okay, I mean, I get it. And I understand battles that I would have fought before where somebody would have said something or I would have argued something to the point. Um, there was an issue with a buddy of mine that was really struggling with some mental health issues and he kept coming after me and I just ignored it.
Coming after you.
Yeah, just online. There was some stuff.
Oh, like attacking you.
Yeah, and
Oh,
like
okay.
I knew what it was. I knew he was going through a really tough time. It wasn't even anything really about me. And everybody's like, "Oh, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? You're gonna beat his ass?" I'm like, "No, why? Like he's already hurting."
Yeah.
A younger me probably would not have handled that as much. And now that I'm older, I'm like, I get it. I have the perspective. I know like it really wasn't anything about me. Something going on in life. Something was stoked. I just don't care about that. But when I was younger, I was angry. Like I loved the competition, but I was angry because I remember sitting in that desk going, I went to school like they told me to do. I got the student loans like they told me I needed to do. They told me my student loans would be $50 a month, and I graduated high school at 17 years old. So I believed them because I'm a kid, right? Nobody in my family went to school before, so there was no perspective there. I was the first one to graduate. And so I'm sitting there going, I didn't get a girl knocked up in high school. I didn't get a girl knocked up in college. I didn't even have as much fun as I should have had in school. And I got good grades. And I'm here and I hate every fucking day.
Hmm.
So I needed to live like the Batman Bruce Wayne double life and just on the other side, just go completely the other way and just air it out. And luckily I found a really good gym with really good people. And but it's funny what that perspective does to you because going back to Steve, I texted him after Sean's fight
St. Louis?
in St. Louis because I remember going to shows and he would show up and he would take a nap and he'd go get something to eat and I'd be like, bro, I'm fighting today. What the fuck? Why are you so relaxed? Why are you so chill? So we're in the back at Sean's fight and I'm just tired, man. 'Cause I had a tooth infection. Like it was really wearing me down. I didn't go to the dentist because we were doing that. I was in a lot of pain, but I'm sitting there and I pull up some mitts and I go to sleep on the bench and I go like this and I go, I'm Steve now.
I have become him.
And I texted him and I'm like, man, it used to kind of drive me a little nuts because he'd show up, go get food, come back, and I'd be back there like, bro,
It's time to go.
it's a big fight tonight. What are you doing? Like, and I just did the same shit for the biggest show that was in St. Louis, and I was like, okay, I get it now.
I want to ask, but I don't. It's I don't want to carry the conversation too quickly because I like what we're talking about, but I do want to ask because like we're talking about competition and how it seemed like it was for both of us like an escape or like a sanctuary from normal life, right? Normalcy. But now that you're not competing, do you get that competitive edge as a coach? I mean, you are competing. I just saw you at Adam Sell's Jiu-Jitsu you wouldn't call it match, but event, sorry, jiu-jitsu event. So like there's aspects of your life where you still compete, but like you're not competing. I always tell people like there's no feeling like cage fighting. There's no feeling like getting in there and throwing leather at each other. And I have wrestled, I've done jiu-jitsu tournaments, I've done these things. No feeling like that. Do you still seem to get that reprieve from when your students fight?
The only ones I work with are
Students is a
Sean
bad
and
word,
Clark.
but like, yeah.
So for me, it was really strange because I always needed a chip. I noticed. So I went to Pans one year as a brown belt, and in the first round I lost. And I'm like, I don't fucking like that. So I went and I fixed that, and I went back next year. I won that, and then I won Master Worlds. And so then I'm like, cool. I got 3 major medals at brown belt. So whenever black belt comes, cool. Nobody can talk shit. I've earned it because everybody want to talk shit on my promotions. But none of you want to talk to Adam when he's looking for a matchup. So in October, if you want a piece, hit him up. And
You're still the same guy.
so, well, it's funny.
all
they
this
get all
growth,
silent.
maturity. The second we start talking about competition, I'll take on the fucking world.
But here's the difference: is like, I used to get nervous for Sean's fights, but I believe in it. So I get excited for them. I know he's going to be okay. It just comes down to the result. What I noticed for me personally is after I won and got that middle finger to everybody that ever questioned anything I ever had. Because I know when people were talking shit when I got promoted because I heard it. I had friends at every gym. And, you know, it's kind of like the MJ.
Did it bother you?
Yeah. Well, I used it. Like, okay, cool.
Oh, like as fuel.
Yeah.
Okay.
For instance, lost a fight to somebody and ran into him at a tournament years later. We were the same rank. Smoked him.
In jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
In jiu-jitsu.
Wasn't even close. Like, and we're buddies and all, but like, I was like, okay, I needed that. The problem was I wasn't young enough to pay off the dividends of some of my things later, you know. So I remember in July, and now I'm older, so my back does not let me train as much as I want to. I don't get to train as much as I physically want, but I know how to get in shape and I know the game. So I had a match in Kansas City last year. This is a 10-minute match.
Jiu-jitsu.
Yes. And I had hurt my neck pretty bad, so I wasn't really able to do jiu-jitsu, but I could get in shape. So I was at the bike doing assault bike sprints and all this stuff. And I'm in the back, and I'm in a pretty good place right now, honestly, and the job kind of drives me nuts, but I'm in a really good relationship. And I'm in the back, and I'm like, I'm not that same angry guy. What am I going to have? What fire is going to go whenever I try to kick this on? I'm like, I don't know. Am I going to even care, or what's going to happen? And so I start warming up, and I just felt happy. And I'm like, oh, shit. I get to have some fun. Because I don't, I'm going to go get this W. That's my plan. But I don't give a shit about the result. I'm not going to get knocked out. I have 10 minutes to just unleash whatever I got. And I'm walking up and down just fucking grinning like a psychopath. Instead of like... And I went out there and I performed. And that dude was puking all over the stage. And I was fine.
I want to be careful how I ask this next question because I don't want to come off as disrespectful. But does jiu-jitsu give you that same... Does it scratch the same itch that fighting did?
No, but it's a similar thing.
So maybe yes, but not as intense.
The highs aren't as high and the lows aren't as low. So the thing about it is, like,
because
some of these guys will turn down matches, and I don't understand it because it's jiu-jitsu. Like, sometimes they just beat you.
It's even more there, though, because I didn't realize this until I had a black belt tell it to me. The reasons why so many black belts don't compete is because they might be a little older. They might have some sort of ailment. And competing and losing at that level is now like a stain on the belt, so to speak. Yeah, that's how they worded it. Now, whether
they haven't fought before,
yeah.
So
or maybe competed, maybe they just trained jiu-jitsu.
Oh man, it's like the thing about it is after you fight somebody, there's like a bond there, and in jiu-jitsu, like
really, you got a lot of guys that don't like me.
It depends. Like, but I fought a lot of people that I wasn't. They were opponents, not enemies. Like, you had a different path to get your fights, though, so
dude, it was so hard to find them, dude. Yeah, it was so hard to find them.
But the thing about it was, like, this last one, this guy came up and we were shaking hands at this jiu-jitsu match, and I was just kind of asking him how he was doing. I watched this one from the week before. I was like, dude, you're tall. He's 6'7". I was like, I almost changed my walkout song to Lil Wayne, 6'7", just for you, and started laughing. And you get to learn who they are as an individual because you're going to run into them again. We may have another match. We may have another grappling exchange. But my worth doesn't change depending on the outcome of that. I'm just there to have fun. Now, I want to win. I've put in the work to do it. But before, whenever I said I had my identity and my self-worth tied to fighting, I don't have that with this. And a lot of that came because I did win that hardware. I did put in that work. And I don't get to train near as much as I would like to anymore because age is a factor. When I was 16, I blew out a disc in my back, so I have to be a little bit more careful than most people. All this is house money. I wasn't supposed to be here. I came to it late, and here I am now. So it's more about the challenge. So a lot of people like to do these tournaments locally, or they'll go to Nashville, and as a black belt, there's like 2 people in there, 3, 4 maybe. I don't really like doing those because when you show up, most times you're already on the podium. I don't want that. Yeah, it happened to me once in Chicago. I didn't plan on it.
May I ask you, may I elaborate? What he means by that is, like, you go to this tournament and there's only 3 guys in the division. So, like, you might see the picture of, like, first, second, and third. But what they don't show you is that there's only 3 people that showed up. So, like, or maybe 4 people showed up. So you have, like, a 75% chance, or 75% chance of, like, medaling because there's only 4 guys.
No, I don't want that shit because it happened to me in Chicago once. And I didn't mean for it to. I went up there. And there was 3 of us in the thing, and I lost 2 decisions. And so they gave me a medal, and I had to go up there. And, you got to be a good sport, so you got to go take the podium photo. But me, I'm like, I don't even deserve this medal. Yeah. So I go to throw it in the trash, and a teammate stops me and pulls it out. I'm like, I don't fucking want this thing. What is this? This is I paid the registration fee. I want 5 people in a division, and I want to win that shit.
Is it safe to assume you don't like participation awards?
They just bring down everything else. So I like the major tournaments, right? The major tournaments, they're insanely hard to win. I was fortunate enough to do it. I caught fire at Master Worlds in the gi, and the reason I wanted to win in the gi is because everybody thought I couldn't do it.
Mm.
So I showed up that day with a smile on my face, and after I won that first one, I knew it was mine. I knew it. You know that flow state when you hit that. Nobody can talk to you. You're just kind of there, and you can feel it. You can feel it.
The confidence.
All of them are going down, and they did. And that's an experience I wish, there's things we've accomplished that when we're done, we wish we would appreciate it more, but it's always, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next
I
thing?
always say that when I'm on my deathbed, I'll stop to smell the roses. Until then, I try not to look back too much.
But I'm not going to get knocked out in jiu-jitsu. My competitive window's over. I'm not going to win and not have to work anymore. It's more like I'm doing this for me. I like to represent my team because my team is good, solid individuals over at Revive and Tag Team, and a lot of them have invested time in me. And there's a lot of younger people there that show up all the time. Even if I don't know them, they kind of know who I am because I am a black belt there, that they look up to me. And I just do it to let everybody know that you can do it. Because the cool thing I like about jiu-jitsu compared to fighting is I'll show up and, you'll have your wrestler, but then you also have the dad that brought his 2 kids to kids class, and he's a lawyer on the side. He does this. You have this guy that sells mortgages. And then you have this guy right here who's just trying to lose weight. You have this girl right here who just got out of a relationship and needs a community. And I'm no more important than any one of them on that map. Their journey is specific to them. We're all there for the same purpose with different backgrounds. That is what I like about jiu-jitsu, because when I go there, I'll help any of them, like if I'm drilling or something along with it. I just wish I got to do it more. There's not as much. There is ego in the competition side of jiu-jitsu, but it's nothing compared to fights. I don't have to cut weight for it. You do have to sell tickets for some shows. I just find it more enjoyable because it's less stressful. Because at the end of the day, if someone submits me, good for you. How did you set that up? Show me that sequence here.
It's just a different sport, different world.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, I enjoyed fighting.
Can I also say this? I think it's a different crowd as well, because think about it, for the average jiu-jitsu enjoyer, chances are they're also a practitioner. Whereas fighting, I find that a lot of the stress from fighting doesn't even come from fighting, fighters, or any of these things. It comes from the fear of losing, because uneducated people will hold it against you so hard.
Yeah.
I don't want to go someplace and someone knows me as the guy that got knocked out. Well, and that's such a fear to me.
And on the other end of that, we know people who have fought nothing but trash cans, and they're 6-0, 7-0. People are like, oh, do you know who this guy is? And I'm like, yeah, he kind of sucks. I hate to tell you this, but
David Mirkatani was on here, and he said that the things that he doesn't like about MMA is that essentially, I don't know if it's relegated to MMA, because it's not just an MMA issue, but because boxing is rife with it as well. But padded records, sandbagging, all these other things, whatever you want to call it. David Mirkatani was just like, yeah, but the average person doesn't know that. Like, you have Tapology, you have if you took 5 minutes to Google someone, chances are if they're a fighter, their Tapology, their Sherdog, whatever will come up. And I mean, if you just click on 2 more links, you can see the strength of schedule. The problem is, you and I might do that, but the general populace won't. So like, you could have a guy who's 3-3, and you're like, oh, 500 fighter, okay, whatever. But like, his 3 wins are against studs, and his 3 losses are against, also studs. It's like, this guy is actually a beast. His strength of schedule was just rough. You could have a guy who's 6-0, and he's a bunny. He's just like prancing around. You have no idea that this guy is actually very soft, and he's never been hit in the face hard before.
Well, and what sucks now for me, since I'm older, is people I fought back then were pretty stout. And now they're just taking fights for money on the side every other weekend, and their record is shit.
Shit now, yeah.
And now I'm like, what are you guys doing? You're making my fucking resume look bad.
Do you think that should be allowed?
I would like to see some type of Masters League. It's hard because, when Rob was here, I watched the whole thing with Rob. I want to like you, Rob, but I don't know what that means. But
I want to like you, Rob.
Because I'll give him credit for all the times he did come through. Like, I'm fair. That's the thing. I'm not going to be some whiny little bitch. Like, just admit what you did was fucked up. That's all. Like, everything else, like, there was shit you guys did for me that was really good. Mm-hmm. But going back to, what was it we were talking about before that? We were on something
currently.
Yeah.
We're essentially talking about, like, sandbagging, patent records, things of that nature.
So,
and you were talking about how the guys...
there's got to be a feeder system, and they need short notice fighters. These promotions do. I know that they had a rough time this past weekend because of some fallouts, and there's nothing you can do for that.
Yeah, it was also... I give them some credit whenever the cards can... Not every card is going to be amazing. And a lot of times, the matchmaking... I think matchmaking is very hard.
The gyms that were around back then aren't now. So one thing I wish would come back is rankings. One of the first things you ever told me whenever I met you, I still remember this because I'm like, this kid's nuts. Is we show up and I don't remember how many practices we had to. Our gyms were separate, but they were in the same affiliation. So we showed up and we were trying to get more work with each other. And we had people in his weight class that were good, and I wanted to learn from Matt Clark and Jay. So
Yeah.
Jay gave me more of the strategy. Steve gave me the combos and how to look at it, intensity. But you said, you know who Damian Newman is? And I go, yeah. You go, I want to fight him. And I go, well, he's ranked number 1 right now, and I just met you. I'm like, okay. But then the Spire rankings were great because what we did back then was they would unleash them.
Forgive me. Let me just give a little bit of context. When Jordan says the Spire rankings were great, back in the day, back when the State Athletic Commission did not, sanction amateur fighting, and it was just strictly professional fighting that they were involved in. You used to have third-party sanctioning bodies like BMF and Spire that would essentially sanction shows, like provide them health insurance, mandate certain things, what have you, kind of set the criteria and the rules. So like Spire or BMF would sanction and hold the responsibility for the amateur portion, and then if it was a pro-am, the state would come in for, the 3 or 4 pro fights. One of the things that Spire did as a sanctioning body is they would get together. I don't remember how often, but they would essentially like update a amateur rankings list of the local guys or the guys that specifically fought for Spire sanctioned events. Or BMF. I think they had like a little tie.
Yeah.
And one of the, just to give some context, one of the nice things about that is this was also before things were like, Tapology didn't exist when I first started fighting. You know what I mean?
MMA fighting or something, didn't we? Well, no, that was the website.
MMA Warehouse, I think it was called.
No, there was another website.
It was like Red.
I can't remember.
Anyway, this is like 2012, 2013. So things weren't as established as they are now. Now you can Google someone's name and they have like Fight Matrix gives you like a number associated to how good you are, which is crazy. It's an algorithm at this point. But that's what Jordan is saying, that like when I said I wanted to fight Damian Newman and he said he's ranked number 1, that's what he's referring to. The Spire rankings ranked him as the number 1 in the Midwest.
Yeah, and at the time I think you were 2-0. I don't even know if they had you ranked yet.
No, they had no idea who I was.
So, and the cool thing about that was like they would send them out and there's your hit list. Like, and there's no fucking excuse for the other guy. But most of us were very gentlemanly about it, and we would friend them on Facebook. I remember when it came out. It came out, and I had just cut to 170 because Steve's like, we got to test you at 170 before we go pro, and I'm like, okay, cool, so we'll do that. They had me at 2 at welterweight, and they had Brandon Karcher at 1. And before I even get to it, Karcher has sent me a friend request. And so there was like this, hey man, like we should, fight on one of these shows, and ended up being on what was Fight Me MMA at the time. And I'm like, cool, let's do it. And it was very like, this is just the next step. It wasn't like,
you're number 1, I'm number 2.
Yeah, let's just see, And so that fight didn't end up happening because we showed up and he had food poisoning and it was unplanned, right? So I had to talk to him and go, look, man, if you're sick, you're sick. Like, I don't want to fight this version of you. We'll find another day.
Because then you're going to make an excuse if something happens.
Well, it's not even that. Like, I want the best version of you.
Yeah.
Like, if I beat you compromised on food poisoning, I'm not the champ.
Yeah.
And I beat the body that showed
this
up.
This was the Jordan Dowdy I talked to when I was 21. And you're like, I'll fight anybody because if I can't beat him, then I'm not the best.
So back then, those rankings were great because you had a list and you could work your way up, and then you would get whatever belt, and then, Jenkins and Fight Me, whenever they were called that. I remember they had like the Gateway belt or something.
Yeah.
And then, so that was cool. That was.
Yeah, we fought for those. I remember I think I was their first champion. You're talking about the Gateway to the Top belt.
Yeah.
It was Jim Jenkins and Kenny Nowling, kind of like joined effort.
And then Prime FS too.
And Prime FS, yeah. So it was me first, and then I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Julius Anglicus. Holy shit. Julius won their light heavyweight belt. Mm-hmm. And I remember that night because it was the first night that I defended mine. Man, dude, memory.
It's weird how...
I forgot that.
How awesome that time was, and nobody will know it now except for us. Because there just wasn't enough. And the only way to document it was Knuckle Junkies if the person that had the video did a good job. Because you remember those were supposed to air on MAV TV.
Yes.
I never saw it air once, did you?
No.
But unfortunately, that promotion kind of ruined the game for a while with free tickets. And then it made it hard for everybody else.
I actually think that's the most genius monetization model for a fight.
It is. It's just hard, like if you were fighting on a Shamrock show for me to sell those tickets. Because tickets are business. You do need to do them. As much as you don't like them, you have to do it.
I'm not speaking from the perspective of the fighter. I'm speaking from the perspective of the business. because what it is
If you don't sell tickets, what are you here for?
but that's what I'm saying. They changed. You know what Kenny Nowling did? I'll give him this credit. He's a piece of shit human being, and I have very little good things to say about him. But one of the things he did was he turned a B2C industry, business to consumer, meaning we are the fighters selling entertainment to these people, to a B2B industry where he was like, I'm selling this event and a populace to the advertisers. It's the same reason why YouTube and Spotify and all these other people and social media platforms can give us these products for free, because we are the product. That's what Kenny Nowling did. Like, think about it logically. He was giving out free tickets because he wanted to pack the house so then he can go to the sponsors and be like, we have 10,000 people in here. How many of you want to give me $10,000 to be our premier sponsor? Give him the credit where credit is due. As an individual, he is a scum of the earth. But as a businessman, I know he's got some shit on CaseNet. You know, you got to swing at a couple more.
Hey, those shows were a blast
Dude,
to go to.
I was very proud in my amateur career. I started at the heart of St. Charles Banquet Center, and by the time I went pro, I was fighting at the River City Casino and headlining at the Family Arena.
My first one was a kickboxing match in a bingo hall against Ray Norris. 2 weeks later, I was in a KC hall in Bethalto, and we're in the back. First fight ever, fighting in your hometown, you know, sell tickets, all this pressure, right? We're in the same gathering area as the people you're fighting. There's no locker rooms. It's just one area. Steve goes over there and just stands there and watches this kid warm up just to fuck with him, by the way. So I'm in the back, nervous as shit. I'm like,
Steve's such an asshole.
I'm never doing this shit again. This is too nerve-wracking. Like, this is the one and done. I'm going to go out there and do what I got to do. So I go out there and I pull this step over arm bar. It was beautiful. I don't even know how I did it. Could I do it today even? I don't know. So I went from I'm not doing that. 2 weeks later, I'm fighting again. And it's in Mattoon, Illinois. My second fight. Now everybody's fighting at, the Armory or the casinos. I'm outside of a barbecue joint in a cornfield. And it's kind of a slightly cold day, but Aaron Brown's in my corner and the sun's out. And his advice to me is, go touch gloves, turn your back to the sun so it's in his eyes.
AB was so smart.
So whenever I'm at the Armory at that last show, I'm like, God, this has come a long way. People debut here and they have no idea.
I don't think people realize how good they have it nowadays.
No, it's
because think about it, like the two promotions we have. I know you have some falling out with Shamrock, but as an event, think about like fighting at the Ameristar or the River City Casino. It's just
the platform is wonderful.
And then think about fighting at the Armory compared to fighting at. Dude, I remember my first boxing match, or my second boxing match, forgive me, was in the pavilion in the back of Granite's, in the back of the gym. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we were fighting outside. Like, I remember I fought at a biker bar where the crowd was cheering for me because they thought I was American. They didn't know I was a foreigner.
For that one? I think I cornered you.
Yeah, you cornered me with. Yeah, you were there. You seen it.
Yeah, that was the one where they had to delay it. They had to delay it because the mat was so hot.
Well, they didn't have a dude, we're talking about the wild west.
Some people were fighting in shoes early on for kickboxing.
No, the first fight, the guy's feet. Okay, so give context. We were at a biker bar. The cage was set up in the back of this biker bar. As far as fights go, Shady Jacks. As far as fights go, one of the funnest, most fun venues we've ever fought at. I loved the crowd because talk about animated, right? Some of the words they used, not PC friendly, but for me as a fighter, I would rather you boo me than not say a thing, right? However, the very first fight was like midday, maybe like 4 p.m. So the sun is out, 3 p.m. The sun is out. It's beating on this canvas, and it's not canvas. It's like a tarp. So like no one had the foresight to be like, hey, this plastic material is going to be like 160 degrees because the sun is just hitting it. The very first fight that happened, do you remember the gentleman hit the bottoms of his feet burned off? He had burns on the bottoms of his feet. So then they took 2x4s and I don't even know, tied them to the post and then put like this little tarp over it. And we had to wait an hour just for the mat to cool off so you could fight on it.
I can't remember who it was.
This is what we had to grow up with.
They fought out of Terry Boyd's gym. I remember that. But
I forget the name of the guy. He was some, I believe he was a white guy with tattoos. I forget. But anyway, sorry, white guy with tattoos.
My favorite venue.
I remember your feet.
My favorite venue that to fight him was the Ameristar by far. And at the time when Shamrock got it, I remember.
Kansas City or St.
Louis, because Rumble Time had it. And I remember when Jesse ended up getting it. And I'm standing in the ring, and he's up there, and, at the time, we were on good terms, and I go, this is the best venue here.
I agree.
I'm so excited to be here, because I stood in there when it was empty, and I just went around it. And I'm like, I'm going to stand here and do this again when it's full. that Ameristar, it just has a lot of history to it. We're talking like even some of the boxing events that were there. I've seen Sal fight Garrett Gross there in a ring, in a boxing ring. Jake Roberts had fought there. Jake Collier had fought there. Tex fought there back when he was boxing.
I can't say his last name to save my life.
That's why.
Tres
Yeah, but
I know who you're
thing
talking about.
It is that, and the locker rooms.
Yeah,
you get a whole area in the locker room.
Four of them. You can go to another one if you want to.
It was, and then I remember I worked down the road from it, and I was in meetings, and I had a couple fights coming up there, and I remember sitting in meetings, and in the background it just loomed, the Ameristar. It was right there in the mirror, and I'm like, July 18th. Yeah, I know, I'm coming. And they'd be sitting there talking blah 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 business bullshit, and I'm like, it's like this it was like both my personalities going like, yeah, I have to fake this, yeah, but I can't wait to get out here today and train for that.
I don't think I was ever less productive than like 2 weeks out from a fight camp. I was basically just like showing up.
The worst thing. Are you ready? No, I didn't do shit.
I
know you guys are excited for me, but if I had a policy toward the back end, like you can't ask me about it if you didn't buy tickets.
No, I would fuck with people. They'd be like, "You ready for this fight?" I'm like, "Dude, no, I'm not ready at all." I was like, "Please, like, talk to my coach, tell him to pull me out of this fight." They would look at me like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "No, fuck you, dude." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm ready. What the fuck do you think I'm doing?"
Did you ever fight with staff?
Dude, no. You know what, Jordan? When I look back at my career, I didn't realize it at the time, but how blessed I was. Like, I never had any outside of like a small hand injury from a car accident. So like I got in a car accident before my pro debut, and like I just hurt my hand really bad. There was some hairline fractures, and the doctor was like, "You gotta take 3 weeks. Don't punch a thing, and it'll heal fine." And I listened to him, but outside of that, like so a month out of my 10-year long career. No concussions, no cuts, no nothing. God himself was like watching over me my entire career. Even in my career, like no concussions, no cuts, no nothing. Actually, I got one cut from Cortavius, but outside of that, like actually, and Austin Bashi, fuck both of you. But no, I was relatively unscathed in my career, and looking back on it, I didn't realize compared to other fighters and how much they've had to deal with, how calm my injury list is. It's
concussions are scary, especially if you're a smart person, because you feel like you lost something.
I feel like I lost something, but I didn't have the concussions. I think it's from sparring.
I would.
How hard did you spar?
I did not like sparring hard. Now there were certain individuals, Aaron Heifel being one of them, when we would like I knew we were both welterweights and we were both like starting off new as pros, and I'm like, they're going to try and match us together. I'd rather us train together because I know how you work. Like, we'll benefit each other. And it did. It worked out. There's times that
you were ahead of your time.
There's times where me and him would be like, let's kick it up just a little bit because we got to fight. But the thing about it is, we knew when we caught somebody. So
you trusted each other as well.
Yeah, you have to trust them. These guys that come in and fucking fight or throw elbows or spinning heel kicks that you don't know, I'm not about that shit. Sean loves it. I love when they bring an injury. Okay, that's cool, man, but not me, because we're simulating it. Like on the ground, fair game. You're not teeing off on someone's brain, but the body's fair game. Head, you got to be a little careful there because you don't want to hurt your teammates because we didn't have that many to pull from anyway.
When I was at Finney's, I did Wednesday sparring, and we went as hard as we wanted because it was the same people. So I always tell people, like, when they go, like, "Do you spar hard?" I go, "Yes," with the same 3 people. And then anybody outside of those 3 people, I don't spar hard because I don't trust them. And then with them, I was like, "Guys, throw the head kicks. Throw whatever you want. I trust you. I know that you know my style at this point. You know if I'm fucking up. You know when to pull." And we did the same thing on the ground. On the ground, I always said, even in the stand-up, I said, to the body and submissions, 100%. Rip that body kick, like all these other things. But to the head, 60%. Throw just without bad intentions. You can throw hard, but you're not trying to knock me out. I know that sounds stupid, but to fighters, that'll make sense. You can throw hard, but you don't have bad intentions behind that, because that's the difference between training and sparring. I can spar with the same intensity in which I'm going to go out to the fight with. The only difference is I'm not trying to knock you out. Where in the fight, I'm trying to fuck you up. And that difference is so astronomical. It's the length of a football field.
And that's the perfect balance to put it. Now, I did not like. There were days you just definitely didn't feel like sparring, but you had to put yourself in it. I remember we would spar.
You want to know what I would have to do? Because I was a fighter and everybody else was like less experienced than me. I would have to tell them they were done. I knew when guys got cracked. And I'd be like, Jose, you're done.
Yep.
And Jose would be like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I was like, I saw your eyes. They rolled back for a second. You got a slight concussion. I don't care. You're done for the day.
You're done for like a couple weeks.
And they would be mad at me. They would be
contact,
mad at me. But to this day, I think they still understand why I did that. Chris Craig, God, what's his name? Nico. So many guys that we had in their gym. Forgive me, guys. CTE is a hell of a drug. But they would get so angry at me. But I was like, the reason I'm here is two-pronged. Number one, I want to get rounds in too. And number two, I don't trust anybody to look over your safety as much as I do myself.
So I was that guy one time that didn't know I had a concussion because Wolves Den, I love them to death. They're my guys. But they love sparring in the 100-degree heat. Not even kicking the humidity out.
Oh,
and now that these guys are getting older, some of them are like, you're right, we didn't like it. I'm like, it's fucking dangerous, man.
Was it the humidity or was it the heat?
Both.
Yeah,
like,
it's
both.
the combination,
fighting
man.
in a sauna, and at the time we didn't have
the
as
oxygen
many.
to the brain.
For Sean's got some great training partners right now, and he did before, but now we got Clark, we got Caleb, we got Abe. Like I don't have to be there and do all that. I'll move with him.
Well, dude, you also offense to what I'm about to say, you think about it. Sean is at the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you're a bigger guy than him, but he's fucking dangerous on his feet.
Yeah, and I mean I can still give him work, but it's not enough.
Not consistent though.
Can
you go in there
do.
Monday through Sunday? No way.
I wish I had the time to do it more. I wish I had time to coach more people. But in that instance, I was trying. Sean had a fight, and I knew he just needed rounds. So I'm there, and I'm in this heat, and I'd be leaving, and I had a headache, and I'd be like, I think it's just overexertion in the heat, So I did that for a couple weeks, and then one time I like tried to do like the shift off the way, and then he's so precise, he hit me right in the nose, and I kind of flashed a little bit, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'll just finish out the day. It's just hot in here. It's really fucking hot, like 100 degrees. The next day, I'm sitting in the hallway at work where I'm working. I sat down, and I'm like,
where was I?
Why did I sit down? And I was looking at my phone. I'm like, how long have I been here? And I was like,
oh, shit.
Fuck.
I just lost time.
So then the thing about a concussion is it's so hard to describe unless you have one. Your brain just doesn't work. Like, you won't find words. Like, I would stop mid-sentence and not find a word. Like, I would glitch. And there was my girlfriend, Jen. She wasn't my girlfriend at the time. She worked there. And I remember telling her something. And she looked at me like,
you just told me that 3 times.
and I'm like, we've had this conversation. And she goes, yes, 3 times. And my words would slur. And I would just, and you know how like whenever people ask too many questions, you get aggravated? Like your brain gets tired on a concussion so much quicker, and you just kind of want to, because it's swollen. And then you have to be very careful with that. So I really don't spar as much as I used to anymore, because one, I don't have the time. I'm trying to balance everything else out. But it made me really aware of like how valuable my brain is, which I already knew. But if you get dinged, just wait. It'll come back. But that was pretty scary, because it messes with your hormone levels too. And because of that last one, my pituitary gland was overreacting, and I had to get on hormone replacement therapy because of that.
Is the pituitary gland the one that regulates the production of testosterone, right? Or all of
something in
your
your hormone profile. But I went, after that concussion, being able to train hard, morning and evening, almost every day, to I would train hard, and I was done for 3 days. And I'm like,
this is weird.
So I went and got blood work done, and yeah, it's called andropause. Women have menopause, men have andropause if they've had, hits to the head over time. So that's where I had to get on, and I won all my competitions up to Master Worlds clean, and I had to get on something for that. But I'll tell you, it's been the best antidepressant, and the line for me is like here. Because depending on your day, like the line you have with people for taking
Testosterone
shit.
replacement therapy?
Yep. And then
Makes
so
sense,
it's leveled me out, and I'm like, if I ever did fight again, I've had people ask me, I'm like, I would just tell people that here's where I am. I'll show you the levels if I was going to do it, because I know I fought people that were taking while they were fighting, and they're fucking cowards.
Brother, you and I both.
They are cowards. And you would caught later, and you'd be like, oh, I was just eating bad meat. No.
Eat bad meat?
You're a little bitch.
You mean the good meat?
You needed something to beat me. You couldn't do it on your own merits. So the thing about it is like, we were kind of briefly talking about contracts earlier. It's like, if someone wanted to fight, and in the contract it said that, hey, here's where my levels are, and then you accept it, then it's fair. But if you didn't know, and you're deceiving everyone else about it, then you're a little bitch.
Fun fact. One of the people that I'm currently talking to about possibly getting on the podcast is Tim Lukanoff. I already sent the preliminary email. We already had like an early discussion, and he seems very receptive to it and wants to do it.
Tim's awesome. I like.
We just need to get like approval and make sure that everything's kosher. You know what I mean? That conversation might be the most work I have to do like beforehand, right? But because how just a little behind the scenes here. How much prep did we do for this episode?
Hardly any. We just said kind of what we want to cover, but you don't have to worry about state and legal and bureaucrats and all that stuff too. But
in that conversation, I'm sure it will come up that there are certain topics that cannot be touched, or at the very least, there's like some sort of transparency clause where they cannot tell because they don't want people to know that how the state operates, right?
Well, and a lot of it's money, so
what have you. But one of the things that I do want to bring up with him is like there was never a time in my entire career where I had to take a drug test.
I did once for Bellator. They had me pee in a cup, and they
for anabolic steroids or like recreational.
No, it was weed.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So this
Who
is what she said.
cares?
She goes, "Well, you're good." I go, "How do you know that?" She goes, "If you had,
She's
if
seen
you
a lot
had
of stoners.
if you had it in your system, it would change color." And I asked her, I go, "Oh, well, what do you do when that happens?" She goes, "I don't know."
Oh, because no one's ever.
Yeah. And so I was
Good for
like,
that lady.
yeah, at least she was honest.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like, I get it. There's not enough money in local promotions to do it, but there should just also be a code of fucking honor. Like,
Brother.
or, if you have a medical
You're operating
thing,
with the lowest common denominator
I know,
of humans.
but here's the thing. That's not how I would operate. I mean, I want an equal playing field, or you don't know what you're getting into. Or you both take it. I don't care. There could even be like a master's league for that. But
think about it like logically. You're in a sport where we discuss sandbaggers. Like there's people that don't care if they're not even really competing. Of course there would be people that are trying to cheat when they do compete. Like it's logical. I never blamed people for taking steroids because I always looked at weight cutting as cheating. So it's like, okay, well you're just doing cheating that not everybody else is doing. Like you're trying to get a competitive advantage. What I did blame them for is being mentally weak. You do need steroids to beat me, but you should feel like a bitch for doing them.
I learned something this weekend. I ran into this kid. He's not from here. He's from Uzbekistan. And he was a child growing up, and he was on a wrestling team. And he said when he turned a certain age, they put him on it. And he's like, here's the before and after. You can see the difference in his jawline. What can you do about that? He's a kid, right? So, like, he can't take it when he's older. Don't get me wrong. But the benefits of that are already in there.
Dude, I'm not the biggest conspiracy theorist, but how many of these guys from Dagestan can only fight in Abu Dhabi?
Yeah. Well, I'll just tell you, he was from the area.
Yeah. Birds of a feather.
Yeah.
I'm all for, Joe Rogan says it best when he's just like, you know what? Just like fucking have if you're going to do it, have everybody do it. I would respect it more if we're all on an equal playing field. We all have the same physician. We all got to get the blood work done. We're all on the same shit. Cool. The part that I dislike, though, is that, when you're lying about it, it's not like you're running track and now you ran to the line faster than me, or playing basketball and now you dunked the ball over me.
Yeah.
You're doing this shit. The most prime example of this that I've ever come across is, do you know how when Luke Rockhold was coming up, he fought Vitor Belfort when Vitor Belfort was at like prime Vitor, when he was on HGH and every other thing, Jesus himself. He did that spinning wheel kick that blew Luke Rockhold's face apart, kind of, right? Knocked him out. Luke Rockhold was on a podcast or whatever, and he said, he's like, my ability to take shots after that fight had never been the same.
No.
So it's like some people look at these things and then go like, oh, well, how much of an advantage is it really? You know what? In the smallest majority or minority of people, maybe it's not an advantage at all, right? It's not the night of the fight. It's the ability to prepare for the fight. And when you can take someone's intelligence in fighting and experience and then couple that with the physical acumen, you're essentially, you said that your prime was 32. But what if your prime was actually 38 and you had 6 more years of training and everything you knew and all the experience you had? How much more deadlier of a human being would you be? That's what was happening.
If you could recover enough to even add 3 more training sessions a week.
Yeah. Or just get good sleep. You would recover more and we're ready for the next training session in a more proper setting. Yeah. If you get 10% efficiency and you train 5 days a week over the course of a month, you're talking about 200% increase training load. 200% in a month. Then you times that by 12. You're talking about 2,400% better training just because you're taking some shit. And over the course of 10 years, that's the thing is like when you look at it in an isolated incident, it can seem minute, but that's the problem because it's not an isolated incident. It is over the course of your body of work. I fought for 10 years. If I was on a cycle, if I was on shit and all these other things, how much more aggressive and explosive and more cardiovascularly adept would I be? And then what would be the outcomes of my fights? Maybe I wouldn't have fought some of the decisions that I had. Maybe they would have been finishes. And then I wouldn't have put as much stress and load on my body. All those training sessions where I came in half mass because I was beat down from the previous training sessions, maybe I would have come in guns blazing and I wouldn't have taken as much damage. It's like the opportunity cost for what's happening is truly immeasurable. So when people are talking about PEDs as if this like, oh, well, you know, he was on the sauce for one fight. No. He got benefits for 3 months.
Oh, yeah.
That now 3 months, if you were to have a 10-year, so 3x4 would be obviously, so there's, I'm going to do some mental math real quick if you don't mind, man. So, 4. So you're talking about roughly 48x that. So 1 of 48 would be roughly 2.2%. So 2.25% of their lifetime career was affected by that. Now that might seem small to you, but what's the difference between 89 and a 91.2? An A and a B.
Hey, they call it the 1% for one reason, right?
Exactly. So, when the margin of error, when the competition level is that tight, 2% is the difference between making it to the UFC and being ranked in the top 15, or being ranked in the top 10 and being in the ranked top 5, or being in the ranked top 5 and being the world champion. 2%.
Well, and
that's 3 months. That's
you get
one
top
cycle.
5, you can get a life-changing fight opportunity.
Yes.
You know, it's just like Bisping.
Yes.
Remember when he got that short
changed the trajectory of his career. And now he's in the Hall of Fame because of it.
It's about timing and everything else. I will say, I don't miss the obsession over it. I used to have to obsess over it.
Can I say one more thing before we get to that? Jim Jenkins said something to me, of all the people, and he said, Ariane, fighting is about 3 things: athleticism, knowledge, and luck. And he was right. It's like, you can be the most gifted athlete, you could be the toughest fucking fighter, but if you don't have any opportunities, you're going to be screwed. And you could have the other 2 at 80% compared to that guy, but if you're getting all the doors open for you, you're going to be a world champion one day. Mm-hmm. So he was right about that. Jim Jenkins, you know, he wasn't the best guy, but he knew some shit about some shit. But you were talking about, when I interrupted you, about like, you're kind of like glad you're no longer in it.
So when I got done talking about what was going on with that therapist, it was like, I felt at peace with what I had, and I didn't.
Your body of work.
Yeah, I didn't feel the need to obsess over it anymore. Like, I got to go to practice here, got to go that. And that's, I mean, if you're competing, you're never at peace, you know, because you never rest on if you ever rest on your accomplishment, you're done. So to compete in itself in that, you have to be obsessed, driven to a point where nothing's ever good enough.
No, you can't stop to smell the roses.
Well, oh, that's great. But even people do it to you. After a fight, the next day you go back into work on a Monday because we work. Oh, what's next? And you're like,
motherfucker, I just got done.
I'm like, I'm going to get sushi with my buddy Ariane, and then we're going to talk. And then that's, you know, I don't know what's next. You know, not yet. Give me a week. But as much as they do it, it would aggravate you. You're already doing it too. Yeah. You're like, what's next? What's the next path? Who's the next student lineup? Who can I bring in next? You know?
Fighting is one of those nerve-wracking games where the more you win, that's the outcome you desire. But the more you win, the harder the job gets.
Mm-hmm. And I don't miss that part of it because I don't need it anymore.
Can I be honest with you?
Mm-hmm.
That's the part I miss the most.
That you need it?
No. That fear. Every day I woke up with this like healthy anxiety of like someone out there is training to fuck me up.
Yep. Well,
I got to be on my toes.
With Danny Moriarty about that. I go, you just got to change what it is because, you know, I could tell
he's fighting.
I could tell he wasn't enjoying fighting. No. He loves the process, but he wasn't enjoying he was where I was at. I saw it. I was kind of telling him that. You got to change what it is. Are you nervous? Or are you excited? Because they're basically the same things if you tell yourself.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this. Oh my God, I'm nervous. One thing I do now when I'm coaching some of these people, or even the guys in the jiu-jitsu mat, is, you know, they'll come up with, oh, I got to go early. Okay. So is the other person. in any competition, they have the same factors. So even when I was like, man, I'm gonna have to fight at 10:30 a nice long ass day, they gotta fight too. Oh man, I gotta cut weight. So do they. Oh, I gotta manage my energy today. So do they.
So they.
It's not just about the fight, it's who overcomes those odds. And the mental odds of it. Because you can do the woe is me, I didn't fight, I didn't feel perfect, I didn't do this. Good. Neither do they. I know they're dealing with this shit too. So who can overcome this the most?
I could throw the opposite at you though. How many guys have you seen are fucking flawless in the gym and then they go out there and they shit the bed under the lights?
Right.
I've seen some guys that train like dog shit and then they go out there and they are world beaters.
I still don't understand it.
Bro.
Ryan Sutton. Awesome dude. Wish he was still around. In the gym, you couldn't fucking touch him.
Yeah.
You couldn't take him down. You couldn't do shit. But when he got into a fight, I felt like he always kind of was.
He was trying to be perfect.
Yes, and that's hard to do because it's just not how a fight is. Like you'll win fights you're not supposed to win. Sometimes you'll lose ones you're definitely not supposed to lose, and sometimes you just go, I'll see what I got.
I said it to Danny. I said, Danny, we all lose in this game if we stay in here long enough. There's too many variables to stay so consistent. It's easy to be great for one night. It's easy to have that peak and be like, I'm the best in the world for 4 hours. It's hard to do it over the course of a career. I was like, because Danny was so worried about, like, he was telling me that, like, a lot of the reason he was getting anxiety before fights is because he was scared of losing. I was like, dude, literally everyone I know has lost. I was like, Sean Woodson has lost. Do you respect him less? Charles Johnson, me, Evan Elder, you. I was like, Danny, you were walking into a gym of losers. Everyone in that gym has tasted defeat. Do you look at them as losers? And I could see it kind of like, Danny's like, no. I was like, so you're putting this artificial, like level of anxiety and like what you perceive the barrier to entry is from other people to you. I was like, it doesn't exist. It's all in your head.
A loss is a good lesson.
Well, you
because
win or you
what
learn.
I enjoy is how you come back from it.
Yeah.
Because everybody sees the fight, but there's more fights to a fight, especially when there's time off after a loss. If I was to use me for an example, I had a concussion in a fight that I was dominating. And COVID hit, so I didn't get to right that ship for a while. All that stuff happened, I had the personal stuff with my friend dying, gym changes, my coach went to another gym and I had to go out there now. So many changes happened and I had to fight all these little fights to my process and things I had to deal with and solve before I even got to the weight cut, which is the fight on its own. Before I even got to the show where I had to fight to manage my energy. Before I was even thinking about all the shit that I was ready to do when it was over and just get over with for that last one. There's more fights than the fight.
Yes.
And a lot of these guys, they create more fights. And I say, you can only fight so many fights. Don't fight 12 fights for one fight. And, if they're in a bad relationship or if they're not doing all this other stuff or if they, a weird thing that happens in this sport is some guys build up an excuse. They'll go out and party or they'll do something stupid.
John Jones.
Oh, man, I would have won, but I did this. Nah, you wanted an excuse. That's still on you, bro. I don't care what you say. But you got to limit the amount of fights you're fighting. And sometimes that could even be like you feel you're not at the right gym and you got to go somewhere else. Like this, I don't have the training partners here. That's why I went out. I loved my gym. I loved my training partners, but some of them had kids and some of them weren't consistent there. So I had to start going to the war room. I had to start going where you guys were because I needed more of that. And it wasn't anything about where I was at. It was like where I'm going, these guys aren't on the same path. I got to go train with Aaron Heifel up here. And
You have to find a room of like-minded individuals.
Yeah, and so, yeah, exactly. And it was just timing. My timing was different. And once I had those, then it was less fights of who's showing up to the gym tonight. I mean, we'd all be in the thing, who's showing up, just so I know I'm not wasting my time, so I go somewhere else.
Jesus.
But limit the amount of fights you have before a fight.
How does it feel now to be at that top? Like, I know that you're not necessarily competing, but you're training with Sean Woodson, and you're getting to see the big show from the vantage points of like the behind the scenes and all this other stuff. Is it how you thought you would get there? And what are some of the emotions and feelings you have when Sean's fighting?
I thought I was going to get there. We've already kind of been over that, different path, different era, different timeline, maybe. And that was a lot of the stuff I had to come to peace with, is that, even if I had to come back and made a run, who's going to get a 35, 36-year-old in the UFC? They don't give a shit about you. There's so many shows, so many things, so many management companies.
Is there any envy?
No. I'm happy. Okay. Like when it comes to Sean, I'm happy because
not just Sean though.
Envy?
Charles, Buckley, Evan, Garrett. No envy.
I mean, the thing with Buckley is a lot of us knew him and we disagreed on how he trained and how he acted in some of the gyms. And, you know, we all wanted to like him. And no matter what you say about him, he went elsewhere. He made it happen. He made it happen out of nothing. He's got a really cool story. And I told him the last time I saw him, not that it means shit to him, but he sold that St. Louis show. He absolutely did. And all the money and all the fights he's going to get, he absolutely deserves because he has branded himself and he's talking the shit and he's backing it up. There's no envy for those guys because they came after me. I'm not surprised by any one of them being there. I would have liked my cup of coffee first. Even if it was a 1, 2, 3 fight deal, I could have that accolade on my resume. Maybe I make a little run up here. Cool. But we all knew those guys were on the way up. Wish more of them would have been able to stay here and build the network to do it.
I agree.
And Jake Roberts, me and him have talked several times. What's it going to take to do this? And I'm like, bro, it's just old mindsets. It's not going to happen right now. Like you were away and you were at the lab, but you came back and you're asking the same questions we've all been asking. You know, like
I think we're on the precipice.
Maybe.
Can I just say one of the benefits of having this podcast is I'm talking to everyone all the time. And can I just say, if I were to set like a meeting, like if I were to be like Mike Rogers, Eric Steenberg, Andrew Ebers, Jamie Crozen, if I were to get the heads of the gyms at like a dinner and be like, gentlemen, let's grow St. Louis, I guarantee you they'd all be on board. I guarantee you they'd have like very symbiotic relationships and all this other stuff. I say the scarcity mindset stems from the promotions. You cannot have this, wide tide growth when the people training at the other gym are very likely going to be your opponents, because especially with this email that the state just sent out, did you see that, $100 cap to travel? So essentially you're telling every promotion that you have to pick local people.
Oh, that covers the hotel room?
No, that's
just travel.
Travel. Okay. Dude, here's the problem with legislation. And I told a couple of people this, that law has no teeth, because the number one rule to creating laws is never create one you can't enforce. And no offense to Tim Lukanoff in the state, good fucking luck. How are you going to find out? How will you know? There's so many ways I don't want to name off. And maybe when I have Tim on here, I'm going to name them off to him. Like, hey, buddy, I got 3 ways I can get around this today that you can't do shit about.
Venmo, Cash App.
Not just that. I can do it legally. Yeah. I could do it legally because there's not enough language in that law. You don't have bylaws in there. It's just 1-2 sentence thing. I'm like, good luck with that one. But not to go around it, but like let's just say that was the rule and every promotion is abiding by it. $100 for travel. If you're going to, like, the farthest you could possibly go is KC, right? $50 back, $50 to get back to St. Louis and then get back. Not even talking about hotel or any of these other things. So what are we really talking about? $100 for travel is like nothing. Or if they live within an hour, they're staying at a hotel and that's it. So it's like you're creating legislation that's enforcing this scarcity mindset, because now the promotion's legal obligation is to use people locally. Well, when you use local people and pit local people against each other, of course they're going to get hyper competitive. Of course St. Charles is going to be like, fuck Wolves Den, and Wolves Den is going to be like, fuck the church, and the church is going to be like, fuck ESMMA, because it's everybody fighting for that small plate. When in reality, when you go over to Kansas City, when you ever go to any of the Kansas shows, the State Athletic Commission and the bylaws and everything are so different that they can bring in people. They're bringing people in to lose to the local guys. And that's the difference, I think, is this scarcity mindset stemmed from the promotions. Now, I don't want to blame the state entirely into it. It's easy to match this way. It's easy to be like, that guy versus this guy. I don't have to worry about hotel. I don't have to worry about travel. Okay, you guys, we'll see you on fight night. But if you do that too much, then you start getting the gyms pitted against each other. Then it's dog eat dog. And then you get one guy that goes to the UFC, the real exceptional individual. When in reality, we could have like maybe 4 or 5 guys go out there. And then the more success we beget, it stays local, the gyms grow, it promotes itself, more success wants to come. Because what do winners like to do? Be surrounded by other winners. It's so easily understood as like a domino effect.
But you're talking at the pro level, right?
And amateur.
Okay.
Because we're talking about the animosity between gyms. So, like, don't get it twisted. It has nothing to do with money from the individual perspective. It has everything to do with the relationship aspect of how can I be your friend? Like, you own gym A, I own gym B, and the majority of our guys, like, I love my students. I want them to succeed. I want them to grow. I want them to get greener pastures. And you want the same for your kids. And every time one of my kids wins, it shatters the dreams of one of your kids. How would we feel about one another?
Be different for sure.
Exactly.
I do think it's at amateur though. It's like we were talking with the Spire rankings. Local amateur, go for it. Because the thing is, it's like when I first saw Adam Meredith fight, I was a pro. Like I'm like, that's the guy. That's the top welterweight here. I think he's really talented. He seems like a good dude. I want to fight him. I fought him, and then here and there we trained together afterward. You can still do that afterward. Pro level is different. Amateur,
I agree with you.
So Clark Stiff, one of the kids I train with, he's fought pretty much everybody in the weight class locally here. And now some of them want to come cross train. Come on down. You guys got this done. Work with each other. I think that's a good model for it because not to be an apologist for these local, I kind of see why they would have to do it because you can only invest so much at the top and bottom, but then the hierarchy has to be built here. Who's your actual prospects?
You are correct. My stipulation was not at the individual level, but the more the macro. If you, as an individual, can understand and conceptualize that competition isn't necessarily tied to like this lifestyle change, okay. But you're also a more intellectual person. There's a lot of people that correlate these two. So like, think about it logically. You might have a guy who got into fighting because he doesn't have a whole lot of options. So like his amateur career is everything to him. Mm-hmm. And then I'll give you a prime example of an individual who's an amateur who I think is an absolute fucking idiot of a person is Patrick Jivac. He's like a 135 bantamweight out of Finney's, and I mean like literally bottom of the barrel IQ, like could not find a dumber person. And the reason I dislike the way he tackles the game is because he'll sit there and talk shit to other coaches. So like I understand what you're saying. Like the amateurs should compete against the amateurs to kind of like iron sharpens iron, right? Mm-hmm. Totally with you. But what happens when the culture isn't necessarily there to like sharpen these kids both mentally and physically? Then you breed animosity because now you have could you imagine if an amateur talked shit to Mike Rogers in the cage? Because that just happened. That just happened on Saturday. So I saw Patrick Givac's dumbass talk to the owner of God, his name is escaping me right now. Matt, can you do me a favor? Forgive me. In real time, get on Instagram and go to Backtaker FC. He's on our Instagram. We follow him. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Forgive me. But Patrick Givac, his guy just wins a decision over the other guy. And Patrick, the amateur bantamweight, is talking shit to the head coach of their gym. What are we doing?
Who's his coach?
The head coach of that? Oh, Patrick?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know at this point.
It comes down to the coach a
yeah.
little bit then,
But that's what I'm trying to say is like, I understand what you're saying and I agree, but there needs to be like some guardrails in there. Like handle your fucking kids. Because what's happening is these animosity, these emotions, and these characters are kind of bleeding and creating a whole lot of
and the coaches do it themselves. Oh, that's a fake black belt. Okay, why don't you go over there and test that theory then?
Yeah.
Talking shit on other people's belts, promotions, and accolades. That's some bitch-ass shit. That's one of the weakest things you can fucking do.
I don't know if you could say that.
It drives me nuts.
But I don't know if you could say that on its value because we did it earlier today with the mutual fighter that we're talking about that sandbags.
He does, though. He does sandbag.
But we, but we know that. We know that. People can make that statement about someone. They might not necessarily know it for certain. Right. The reason we know it is because we know all the back.
Yeah, but when you see a legitimate coach and program promote someone from blue to purple, and then you all talk shit on it, or purple to brown, I mean, I got that every fucking belt promotion I had, and I'm like, really? Come at me now. Yeah, like, there's ways to compete against me if you want to do that. That's some bullshit. Yeah. It's some. There's no other way to do it. I could just talk like Sean. It's some bitch ass shit, Mm-hmm. Like, really. Really?
I think there's some growth.
And then they do it like that gym's, all their accomplishments don't mean nothing and their coach sucks. Ours is great, but you're not innovating. They are, so it is sour grapes. Why don't we have that whole conversation there? Because, I mean, that's what it is. It's like, my dick's bigger than your dick. And it's like, well, I'll pull mine out if you want to measure. Like, I'm okay with mine, but why are you talking about mine?
Yeah, I can understand that.
Use
I
a
guess
restroom
maybe it's
break.
not as simple as scarcity mindset, but if I were to do a pie chart, I think that's the majority of it. Ben Lawler and the Tom James family will ensure that whether you're purchasing your first custom fit suit or your 50th, the process is unrivaled. With the experience and quality of the Tom James name, allow Ben Lawler to help shape the vision that is your professional brand with a suit that speaks to the conviction in their craft. With fabric sourced here in the US, you'll know quality and craftsmanship are top of class. Like a sculptor examines wet clay before creating a masterpiece, Ben Lawler will walk you through the process of selection, measuring, and stitching to ensure your finished product is a work of art. Putting your trust in Ben is a guarantee that your brand will elevate to the next level. And always remember, you don't get a second chance at a first impression. I wanted to discuss the UFC STL card because, you're in Sean Woodson's corner, and from the outside looking in, someone might only see the Sean Woodson aspect of it, but I kind of see the duality of it because Sean Woodson, his dream was to fight in St. Louis for his city, for his people, ever since he was first starting out as a boxer, right? And he finally, the body of work culminates this dream. And when I say his dream, I'm not saying the dream, a dream. I'm sure his ultimate goal is world champion, right? Like all of us was. But also you finally make it to the big show, and I don't know if this is the right way to describe it, but maybe in a sweeter position, because not only are you sitting there in the background of the UFC or whatever, but you're also doing it for an individual that you cherish and you love and you genuinely respect and want to see succeed. And then for him to go out there and have that fight with Alex Caceres, which was a tough fight, super competitive, exactly what Sean needed to really show his grit and determination in his backyard to culminate with the victory. I mean, can you just kind of walk me through, what the talks were like when the fight was formulating? Training camp, leading to weigh-ins, fight night. Because I'm curious. I have no idea.
It was a bit of a full circle moment. I kind of have to remove myself from it and then come back to it later.
You.
Yeah, it's so anything with Sean's. It's not about me. I'm just there to help him however I need to. But and this will make sense in a second. But the new Star Wars movies suck. But there's one line in the Last Jedi that resonates with me as I'm getting older, and it's when Luke is talking to Yoda, and Yoda goes, "The true burden of all masters is we are what they grow beyond." So earlier when you said, "What do you think about Buckley and all these guys?" They grow beyond where we got. So we got the game to a certain point, and then these guys pass it up, and hopefully someone passes it up for them. So I did compete at that venue under a different banner. It was Bellator at the time, but Sean was built for this more than I
You're
ever
talking about the
was.
Enterprise Center.
Yes. And he felt more pressure being at home. And it was nice for us because usually you have to travel. And, when you work at a business, you don't get much PTO time to do it. So
logistically, it was nice for everybody.
Yeah. And I know he felt more pressure doing it at home, but it always comes down to the weight cut, and just how does he feel the next day? How's it come off? But he gets better every camp. And that one in particular,
it's not.
I'm not one to.
Is it not getting worse for him?
What?
Weight cut?
It does.
Okay, I was going to say.
There's some stuff I think we could do a little better, but
anyway, nuance.
There's always process. But on this one in particular, so I hold mitts for him and I give him some things to look for, right? I'm in no way the striker Sean is. But tactically I can see some things and he'll see it. He can read very well. I saw some things we could attack with Alex Caceres. And so we polished up a lot of his southpaw because he likes to do this southpaw stomp to the knee. And everybody's going to kick Sean's legs. I go, let's take this away from him. So instead of being orthodox to his mismatched lead where he can stomp on it, let's talk about going more southpaw. And I'm like, so most people can do a calf kick in orthodox to another orthodox pretty easy. Let's polish this calf kick up. Show knees, keep distance. And if you watch the beginning of that fight, he was attacking that calf. And that's what helped slow him down. So tactically, the things we worked on in there, he was able to employ. And so for me, I felt really good about that. Because I knew that's what we worked on and set that goal for, and he executed, and now he's even... So we fought like 2 or 3 southpaws in a row. But this was the one that had the speed. So Sean's got the length,
Alex
they have
is
the
dangerous.
speed. So let's slow them down a little bit. And to see him use that on what we would all say is probably not his best day because he woke up that day with a heat rash.
I don't know what a heat rash is.
And yeah,
I don't know.
So it's a bunch of spots down. It's very uncomfortable.
Oh.
It's almost like a burn.
Oh, on
but
the skin.
heat-
On the skin. Okay.
So, and he's like, "Is this staph?" And I'm like, "No, you'd know if it was. Your heart rate would be really off." But so he was already uncomfortable that day. We warmed up, had to do all that. But that's why right after the fight, he's like, "Put the shirt on me," because he didn't want anybody to see the heat rash. But for him to come full circle, do it at home with his story and background with how his father died when he was 13, it was really good. But he also said he'll never do it again because it was just a lot of pressure. But it was very cool. I wish I could have got to see Charles's fight and Joaquin's fight.
Yeah,
because I couldn't take in the crowd like it was out there, and I don't necessarily hear the crowd when we're there because I'm just focused on the moment. I never did when I competed either, because we're just there now. As far as like, I just know if I get Sean ready, I don't have to worry about anything. Like, we tune him up, we tune the guitar up, we get him in a rhythm, and we're good to go. I at first when we did Contender Series, I was like,
oh my God.
like
yeah.
we cut that was
that's
so
the
that was
moment.
jumping into a new world for us. Like
Yeah.
that was like,
If you lose, you're back at the line. If you win, you're in the show.
yep. And he was almost held back like I was, but that got him over the hump. That's a whole nother story. But
Similar promotion?
yeah.
Man.
Yeah, let's just say he was under contract too.
Let's
and
talk
all
about
this stuff.
man, did I just completely forget about that? Okay, let's talk about that one offline. But anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
So
because I want to talk more about the UFC right now.
yeah, and you know, as he started getting more success, he's like 7-1-1.
Yeah.
And the one he lost, he was winning. And what people don't know is
He took that fight on short notice.
Sean
with
holds the
Payson,
record
Julian
from-
Erosa. I remember that
But
fight.
so Sean holds the record, first place and second place for more fight replacements, and the Erosa fight is third. So you prepare for somebody, and a fighter's a fighter, right? But there is a lot of game planning, and here's their tendencies and all this that we watch for. The Erosa fight, I show up to get on the plane on Tuesday. And he shows up and he tells me I didn't get any sleep. I'm like, why not? He's like, I was on the phone all night because my opponent's out, and I told them I want Daniel Pineda, and they want me to fight Julian Erosa. I go, which one's the tougher fight? He goes, Pineda. So I want Pineda. He's like, but Pineda's managed by my management team, and so like they weren't kind of really looking. They think he's probably too good for me right now, but that's who I want. He wanted the tougher fight, and so this whole thing was going back and forth, and then Erosa took it. And with the stress of the travel and not knowing if he had an opponent and all that and the weight cut, it kind of taxed his cardio more than he wanted to, and he got caught in a moment. But that's the one flaw he has. Now, the one with when he fought in Utah against, what was it? I can't think of his name right now. It's escaping me. Anyway, the one where he got knocked
Elevation?
down. Yeah, the one where he got knocked down and came back up. That was when all the stuff was going on with his mom, and I still think he won that fight.
Didn't he? Or was it a draw? No, it was
a draw. But I thought he won 2 and 3 pretty clearly because he was rushing to fight that fight.
Yeah, but it was because I think, that was a weird one too.
It was a weird one. And I don't think the judges understood what a buggy choke was either. Which I've heard happened to Lucas Clay. Like, he got someone in a buggy choke years ago, and they stood him up because they didn't know. But
that is so
to see him
that
cap
is
it
so
off,
crazy to me
yeah.
that the judges of our sport are.
The refs don't understand it.
I know who you're talking about.
Some of them do.
It's tough. Man.
There's a certain point where they should just shut the fuck up.
Who?
Because
The judges or the refs?
The refs.
Yeah.
Like, you're not in there. If I took someone down and I'm being a little boring, maybe I got poked in the eye and you didn't see it. Maybe I broke my hand. I dislocated my foot in a fight in the first round, and I couldn't finish the fight, so I had to go the full distance. You don't know the injuries I'm dealing with. What am I going to tell you? No, you'll stop the fight.
Yeah.
I've sold 50 to 100 plus tickets, cut all this weight, and now I'm injured, and I'm not telling you.
I'm just trying to.
But now you're going to tell me to stand up when I'm in side control throwing knees? The fuck out of here.
Very specific event. Anyway, so Sean Woodson, Utah, some shit.
So every time he's gotten better. And every time we add tools, and now we're in the position where we could be in the rankings soon. And then, so this year could be rankings, next year could be title run. It just comes down to...
How old is Sean now?
31, I believe.
He's exactly 31, my age.
Yeah.
He's
not even in his prime yet.
Well, he's got to start to think about it, though.
I was joking with him, and he was just like, yeah, I already thought of that. I go, hey, man, once, you're on the back end of age and, you're finding your way out, you ought to just collect the win in every weight class on the way to eating your way back up. And he's like, I already thought about that.
Going back to super heavyweight.
Well, he went down, remember?
Yeah.
So
He's heavyweight boxers.
So now go back up.
I was actually going to ask you, like, have there ever been talks about moving to 55? Like, one of the things that's crazy to me is that not that Sean can make the weight, but that he can continue to make the weight. Because one of the things that I was trying to allude to earlier was one of the things for myself. If I ever did come back to fighting, it would not be at 135. Mm-hmm. The amount of work that it takes for me to get my weight down to 135 now, there was a time in my life where I thought maybe I could make 25. And now, when I was like 25, like literally I was 25 years old thinking about making 125. Now, I'm 31 and my body will never see 130 anything. Like it's going to be 140 minimum, right? So like if I ever did come back to fighting, I'm not saying that I would, but if I ever did, the amount of work that I had to do to get to 135 was so immense that I would never put my body through that again. And I'm sure it's only gotten worse, right? Because I'm 2 years removed now. I was 29, I'm 31 now. I have no idea how Sean Woodson makes 145. I know it's discipline and diet and work ethic and all these other things. I mean, I have no idea how he's been consistently making 145.
Well, the interesting thing is, when I used to make 170, I would cut from 191. And I had to do hour-long baths. And I would do 3 the night before and 2 the morning of to make it. We can get him done in 2 runs.
To give some context, when you say baths, you mean hot water baths.
Hot Epsom salt baths.
Yes, in order to suck the water out of your body. It's basically like a hydrated sauna. There's dry saunas and humidified saunas. And then, by the way, also my preferred way of cutting weight, because my head doesn't get hot, is you could take a very hot bath and essentially get the body's temperature to a degree where it thinks it's hot from working out, so it'll sweat on its own. Similar to what happens in a sauna.
And it's the best way to do it by far, because the salt draws it out.
I don't know, though, because there's some guys, I think it's, I don't want to say universally, because there's some guys I know, Chris Craig's a prime example. I've seen him in the sauna, 5 minutes, he's like, it's a straight line down his arm. For me, it takes like 15 minutes in the sauna, but I can lose like 2 pounds in 20 minutes in a bath. Mm-hmm. I think different strokes for different folks.
He hates the baths.
You
used to do lives when you were in there, remember?
Yeah, dude, well, that's back when cutting weight was easy.
Yeah. So
the last 2 pounds, boys, what's going on?
There's he's talked about wanting to do it a couple times. The thing is, at 55, there's a lot of guys cutting from 195. I've told him the thing is,
what does he walk around at?
About 60? He tries to stay around 170, 175.
That's what I thought. Okay.
But the thing is, like, whenever you move up a weight class, eventually you're cutting the same amount of weight. When I moved up to 185, then I was
your equilibrium cutting. Also goes up.
Yep. So what it's going to take for him more is, and this kind of changed whenever the IV was taken away. I heard some guys talking about this. These guys are so convinced that since fighting is hard, every workout has to be hard. Everything, if you know heart rate zones, you'll know the high-end stuff only burns glycogen and sugar. That's not going to burn body fat. That's why you have to replenish it. That's why it's so short-lived that you have that energy storage. You have to go more into the aerobic base. The aerobic base is more your fat burning, and we're talking that's the 60 to 70%. That long distance, we're talking 30, 35, 45 minutes of that 3 times a week will get your body weight down more than training hard will. I used to have to swim laps, half an hour straight of laps, 2 to 3 times a week in the morning before going to work to make 170. It gives you great aerobic conditioning, but you don't do it for the anaerobic. When your aerobic is really high, your anaerobic your heart rates drop up and down quickly.
Can you explain the difference between aerobic and anaerobic?
Aerobic is like your baseline level, your capacity for doing consistent work at a certain level, certain heart rate percentage. And then the aerobic is the foundation for anaerobic. Anaerobic is if I did a sprint and stopped.
Yeah.
Or I unloaded like a 5-piece combo and stopped. Fighting is very anaerobic, but without the aerobic base, your heart rate is just not as well. So the lower your resting heart rate gets, the better your recovery is, the better in shape you are. Mop gets his heart rate in like the 40s because he loves to swim. It's kind of insane, to be honest with you. He's got the heart rate of like a...
Michael Bisping, I think, has like a resting heart rate of around like 40.
And a lot of that does come down to some genetics, but the longer duration cardio you do, and there's a reason boxers did it forever.
How much of that is also mental? Because like, I mean, if you're overwhelmed by the moment, I mean, your heart's going to race. But if you're calm and you're concise,
yeah, absolutely, it's got something.
So it's like both physical and mental.
But if anyone's trying to cut weight down, that long distance aerobic and there's no replacement for it. Everybody tries to gimmick it and do it. You can do it on a run, you can do it on a swim, you can do it on a bike.
Floyd Mayweather, makes 150 million plus a fight, runs like 5 miles a day.
And I argue with these kids about it because they're like, oh, well, it's just not really going to get me in shape. I don't see it. It'll keep you in shape more than I was before this last event. I had that tooth infection I was telling you about when Sean had this thing going. So that was going on during St. Louis. I was on a high dose antibiotic for 10 days. And I knew I couldn't get my heart rate up that high, but was doing a lot of low level aerobic stuff. I came back and I didn't miss a beat.
Yeah.
Because your heart rate, how much you tax it, how much you push it, depends on how much you recover. So even on your lighter days, you can just do a bunch of aerobic work and be just fine. That's still good baseline, but it drops your body weight. So in walking, if you can walk, this doesn't work for fighters so much because their metabolic rate is higher from their workload. If someone off the couch gets up and walks, they're going to burn more calories than someone like, that is active. So the lower heart rate hits the fat zones and the body weight zones, even if someone's not fat. That subcutaneous thing under your skin, and the higher end stuff just burns sugars, and then you're replaced out of sugars. So to answer the question in a long way, to lower your body fat down to change weight classes takes that long distance cardio. And you can do it without a coach. And that's the thing, like if you show up to practice and they have you doing fat camp workouts, you need to find a different coach.
Yeah.
It's your job to show up in shape.
No, I agree. It's like you're training him out of fight, or not training him, but like you're getting ready to fight. All the extracurriculars need to be done by the fighter. That's why they're called a professional. I do want to ask you 2 more questions before we end, if you don't mind. Number 1, I love when you start talking about fighting and the aspects of fighting because you're an intelligent guy, and the way you articulate these things is more based in logic and science than feeling and emotion, which I can resonate with 100%.
Yeah, no.
One of the things that people might not know is when I was still fighting, I used to outsource my post weigh-in meal to you.
Oh yeah, that's right. I do remember that.
Yeah, and because I don't know if you recall, but like I used to go to you and be like, dude, like I'm like eating Chipotle after weigh-ins. And you're like, Ariane, what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean? And you would do the quinoa with the grass-fed beef and the magnesium blend and all this other stuff. And I never felt better post weigh-in pre-fight than when I used you for my meal prep plan. Once I would make weight, rehydrate, refuel before competition. And you said something to me that like resonated with me. You're like, every fighter, once they make weight, wants to like immediately splurge. Like how many guys you see make weight, and then the first thing they do is like go to Texas Roadhouse or any of this other shit. And you would be like, you've been training so hard and you've been dieting so rigorously. Like, why would you give that up the night before competition?
Yeah, you're rewarding yourself.
You're rewarding yourself too early. You haven't competed yet. You've now stipulated that the competition will happen. And I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, you're absolutely right. Like,
well, and it's not only that, but you're eating food you haven't been eating, and also you're so severely dehydrated. If you went to a hospital, which some of us needed to because I had gum lines recede, I had blood clots from cutting weight.
dude,
like
I got a story for you.
Yeah, but if you were to go to the hospital in that condition, they would have been like, oh my God, get him a sandwich. They'd hook your ass to an IV for 2 hours. So the rehydration protocol, I have all of it done now because I've even added some stuff that I've seen the UFC does.
That's what I was going to ask you. Exactly what I was going to ask you.
So for the first hour and a half, you shouldn't be hardly eating anything. You should just be taking fluids. And when I started to do that, I went from putting on 20 pounds to 25, 26 pounds afterward and feeling good. Because if you eat too early, your body is going to be digesting instead of taking in those nutrients, a lot of the electrolytes you need first. So once you have the electrolytes in you, then you're starting to, because in your brains, I lost vision one time cutting weight. I could see from me to you, and I didn't realize this until I started taking in fluids, but then I'm like, oh shit. I was like, I lost vision.
Jordan, when I fought, God, what's his name? Dylan Tolbert. It was after COVID. So we were supposed to fight. COVID happened. Anyway, I had to lose 60 pounds in 3 months. I did it. But that was the first time ever in my career, because those last 5 pounds were fucking rough. Yep. They have never been so rough in my life. I had to get my wife to drive me for 2 reasons. And everyone at weigh-ins was like, Aragon, are you okay? I was sickly. My hands, unless I forced them open, I was so dehydrated, if I closed them, they would cramp. I've never had hand cramps before in my life. So I told Bruno, I was like, I need you to drive me because I can't put my hand on the steering wheel without having to fight it open. So like I'm going to have to drive my car like this, you know what I mean? And 2, I was literally losing field of depth. Like,
Yep.
I could not see, for those that don't understand the dimensions of this room, we have about, Matt, what would you say, 12 feet? No, maybe 24 feet to a wall, and then 15 feet until a wall. I could not see from me to that wall. And I had to drive to the casino. I was like, I can't, baby. I'm sorry to do this. Can you call off work? Because it was a Friday weigh-ins. I was like, can you call off work? I need you to drive me to my fight. And she's like, yeah, sure, okay. It was the one and only time where I was like, I don't know if this is healthy. I'll give you another one up. Right before that fight. So I went in there, made weight and all that stuff. Right before that fight, when I was warming up with Evan Elder, blood was coming from my esophagus. Mm-hmm. When I talked to a doctor afterwards, he's like, the reason that is you were so dehydrated, the allocation of fluids in your body were going to like the most, like your organs, your tissue, your brain. It wasn't even going to your muscles or your skin or anything like that. So your esophagus was so dry when you started doing a warm-up, an exercise, when the tissue started to expand, it would literally crack because it was still dehydrated. You did not rehydrate properly. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Well, and I always had people drive me. And my middle brother, had never really seen me cut weight. When he came back, he was like,
Jesus Christ.
So I would have people drive me because I'd be resting. And when I got to the venue, I'm on. You know, the fight is on at the venue. I don't want you to see me deprived. I'm there walking around.
You put on a mask.
Yeah. So I save my energy for that. But you've seen Bad Santa, right? When he thought the granny died in the chair. I'm in the back like this, and Jared just looks and goes, "Oh, granny, you want me to make you some sandwiches?"
Go fuck yourself.
But this is another thing that they've changed, thankfully. Because I remember I used to show up at weigh-ins and be like, "Why the fuck do we got to wait till 6:30? Like, why?"
Yeah, now they
like
do
the
early.
scales here, the states here. You're like, "Oh, well, you'll be okay." I'm like, no, you don't understand. It takes 72 hours for the brain to actually rehydrate. This extra hour is important because if I get these fluids in, I might be able to sneak in a snack later. And now that you can show up 4:35 and weigh in, I never understood that. It drove me fucking nuts.
Well, here's my response to that. I just think weight cutting, you know who does it the best? 1FC. With the rehydration and the hydration tests and all this other stuff. I think that's the best way to do it. Mm-hmm. Because what are we really doing? What we're really doing is we're not cutting weight for an advantage. We're cutting weight to be competitive. Because everyone else is cutting weight. I have to cut 40 pounds because you're cutting 40 pounds. Why? Because somewhere, somehow, sometime, everyone was fighting their own weight, and then one guy lost to another guy and realized, like, I could just lose 10 pounds and go to another weight class, and then they would crush it, and then all those guys would cut weight, and then vice versa. It was a domino effect. I think, and here's the problem, right? On the local scene, how are you going to do it? There's no funding. We can't even do drug testing, let alone hydration testing.
Well, you could probably limit what they cut. Because one thing I hate is when people say, and I hate this saying, well, this is how we've always done it. Okay. Well, with that mindset, we'd still be in horses and carriages, and we wouldn't get anywhere. So there's room for progress. But
I only read with
there's a weight that you can make, and there's an optimal weight you can compete at. And those aren't always the same thing. Abe and Caleb, I told them recently, they're in their early 20s. And I was like, what weight class do you fight? And every time I see Abe, I'm like, you're taller than I know. I'm like, you'll end up fighting 45. Well, I can make 35. Okay.
For now.
You're going to run out of fights there, though. But why don't you put on a little muscle and do 45? And why don't you put on a little muscle and go to 55? You won't have the rib injuries when you cut weight and the cartilage from the grappling. That would be the optimal weight, because I should have moved up a lot earlier than I did. But it's dumb, a lot of it. Now that I look at it. And you know, the thing is, now that you remember when you would crave donuts and sweet shit and all that? I don't crave that anymore.
No, me neither.
I don't, but I did forget about
I crave whiskey and Taco Bell.
Yeah, and I have the whole thing lined out, the whole weight cutting protocol. Now, I can't own your diet or nothing, but the week I can.
There's no way that can be universal, though. Correct? Like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, you can have something for Sean Woodson. You can have something for yourself. How does the PI do it? There's no way they do it universally for everybody.
So the rehydration depends on what you're cutting from. So in my version, I have a math equation, because every pound sweated out, you lose like 525 milligrams of sodium. So you take the actual amount you have down. And so if you've cut down and you're cutting 18 pounds total, 18 times that amount is how much salt you have to take back in to rehydrate back to that base level. You have to know how to do basic math and follow what I tell you, but you can do it several different ways. You can do like an element, and then throw some carbs in there. But I have the whole thing mapped out for like how much you should drink during the week, where you should be, certain things you can take to help yourself, like vitamin C is a natural diuretic. So it's not illegal. You can take that. Plus, it helps your white blood cell count while you're cutting weight. Every weight cut is a little different. You kind of have to learn your body and process. But in there's different ways to do it, and I've changed because I wrote what I did. I cut weight myself. I did the whole thing myself. I would get in the tub all those times by me. I had help with my diet from the sharers and all that kind of stuff. But the weight cut, the rehydration, I did it all myself. And I heard you say something when you were talking about your wrestling team. So when I tell these guys this, I'm not telling you something I didn't already do before. No. And why would I tell you something that's not in your best interest? You think I just made this shit up to win some power struggle?
Say it again, please. Say it again, please.
I did this already. I wrote it down because I did it. I have firsthand experience in this. If I was some just person that didn't do it, and I gave you this math equation, didn't make sense without any practice. This isn't theory. This is practice.
I tell all my kids, I will never tell you to do something I either haven't done myself or would do myself.
Well, that's why I don't have any pity for them. They're like, I gotta cut this weight. Okay, cool. You have a team going with you in a hotel room to cut it, to watch, and be there with you.
It's a completely different environment.
I passed out cutting weight one time. I was watching, I was in a bathtub, so luckily I was propped up, and I was watching Spectre.
Were you doing half?
Yeah, at that point. And so I leaned against the thing, and I'm watching the James Bond movie Spectre.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt the conversation, but let me give context. A lot of times when you do a hot water bath, the first couple submerges are up to the neck because you're trying to get the full body hot. Afterwards, what you're really trying to do is just maintain the sweat. So like what I would do is I would do 20 minutes up to my neck. I would take 5 minutes out in towels. So I was still kind of like immersed in that heat, but not necessarily increasing my body temperature, just trying to maintain or kind of lower it. Then the soak that I would do immediately after a 20-minute soak would be a 15-minute up to my waist soak, so that my lower extremities were still connected to that heat. My body temperature wouldn't necessarily deplete. It would just kind of maintain, and I would maintain the stress without stressing my body. Then I would go do the towels again, and then the third soak would be another up to my neck, but only 10 minutes after that, because I'm no longer trying to get my body hot. I'm just trying to keep it hot. Well, forgive me. So that's why.
That was your process. So most people
that's
don't even
what worked for
they're
me
doing. But two things on that note. A lot of people think you got to be in damn near boiling ass water.
No,
you don't.
No.
Anything over homeostasis will make you sweat.
Yeah.
98.6 is average for people. So if you're in 104 temperature water, which you get in a hot tub that's 103 degrees, you're gonna sweat. But also what it comes down to is a lot of things I have to tell these guys when they're cutting weight is they think they have to stay hot the entire time.
No.
You have to cool off because at a certain point your body goes,
shuts down.
Sweating's not working, so we're going to hold on to what we have.
Yes.
I've told Danny this and I've told Sean this because they think the room's got to be hot. I'm like, you have to cool off before you sweat again. That's why you can't do it all in one go. You have to do it, and then I would go take a nap.
Do you keep the room cool?
I did.
I would close the door to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. The tub and the bathroom would be hot, but I would close the door so that when I would open it, I would close it behind me to keep that room warm. Mm-hmm. But whatever I was going to, weight cuts in the winter were the best because I would go outside and I would just breathe in that cold air, and it was, dude, it was euphoric. It was almost orgasmic. Like when you're miserable and you breathe in that cold air and it hits you, you're like, thank the Lord.
I remember one time I was cutting weight in a hot tub, and I was just going through it, and I'm just like, what do you need to live? You need food, you need water, and you need oxygen.
Everyone goes through this.
And I'm like, I can't have two of those things, so I'm going to taste this air. And I'm outside in this hot tub, and I'm like, that's great. I'm just trying to be as grateful as I can for the oxygen. I got one of the three things I need to survive, and I was just having that conversation. But you have to cool off again. So what I would do is I would go put a fan on me. I'd take a nap for another hour, and then I'd go back. And that was how you had to
how long would you soak?
I would do, I would do about 25 minutes, a 5-minute break, back in, then a complete hour I would just nap or whatever. And a lot of these guys say they don't sleep well during a weight cut. I passed out.
Forgive me, 25 minutes soaking, 5 minutes out, and then another 25 minutes up to the next soaking?
I would do 2 sessions in 1 hour. And so I would do 5 hours. So
how much would you lose in an hour, you would say? 5 pounds?
So the thing about it is, out the gate, it comes in chunks, and then it's like a rag filled with water. Every time you squeeze it, less is going to come out. That's what I try to tell these guys. Oh, I can cut 5 pounds in one go. You've already been cutting, so there's not much left to squeeze out.
And your body's going to start holding that water in because it's trying to survive.
So every time I keep track of my phone's over there. Every time I keep track of where he was, what he did, what we did afterward. Because then when it's the next cut, I want to see what we did, and I want to see what came off so I have an idea.
I love how you tackle this.
The first go around, he'll usually somewhere between 6 and 7 pounds, which is kind of crazy because I don't think I ever did that.
In a 25-minute soak?
So he does. He likes to hit mitts for 3 rounds in a hot room, get in a sauna, and then we wrap. We do like a wrap.
How long does he do the sauna?
Set for 30 minutes. It can be about 20, 25.
That makes sense. I mean, if you're doing 3 rounds, 30-minute sauna, and sitting in the towels.
But the reason I don't like it, he likes it. That's his process. Is you're using energy. The bath is passive.
Yes.
The bath is so passive.
And it's explosive. I always tell my wife, because my wife is like, "Why are you doing this?" I was like, "Because I would rather an extreme amount of pressure for 2 hours than I would rather do a 10 for 2 hours than a 7 for 5 hours. Like, let's just fucking do it and get it over
You're
with."
milking out the suffering. And there's been times, maybe this happened to you, where I had made weight at home, and I'm looking at the scale, and I would sit down and I would just start bawling because it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. The problem is I just have to wait till they fucking let me weigh in, but I'm going to bed.
Dude.
That part's over. I'm all, because it's worse than the fight, because you go, I can't wait to have my life back.
Can I tell you why I retired? More than anything.
Yeah.
Not because I don't want to compete, not because I don't want to fight. I don't want to cut weight.
Yeah, I
don't want to cut weight. I don't want to sell tickets. I don't want to cut weight. I wish I could just walk into a cage at 170 and compete. The problem is, at 170, I'm fighting guys that weigh 225.
Yep.
I'm not going to be competitive. So I don't want to cut weight. I'll train. I'll be in shape and all that stuff. But physically, I won't be able to be competitive. So then it's like, the only way for me to be competitive is to cut weight and put in the time for my diet and all these other things I don't want to do. And I'm just like, you know what, dude? I told my wife this because the day that in my head that I retired, the way I knew I retired was I went into my bathroom, I took my scale and I tossed it. And she was like, "Why would you do that?" Like, I'm going to use it. I was like, "Buy yourself another scale." I've had that same scale for 5 years because I knew exactly how off it was compared to the state scale. I don't want to fucking see that thing anymore. By the way, Jordan, fun fact. I told myself that ever since I was 13, I had been cutting weight for wrestling. And then when I was 18, 19, I had started cutting weight for fighting. I had been cutting weight for a total of 16 years. It will be 16 years before I step on a scale again. I don't care. Because for 16 years, that fucking tool has ruled my life. I can tell you that 16 fluid ounces is exactly 1 pound because I know that because of science. Because I used to like try to measure how much water I was drinking until I would look into it. Like, okay, so 16 fluid ounces. So if I do a 58 ounce, this is going to be this much. After I drink this, I'm going to weigh this much, and then I can eat this many grams of this. That's how I used to eat and drink. It was science.
I do the same
and I
thing.
told myself for 16 years, it's going to be enjoyment. I'm going to live. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to let myself get fat. Not like if I go up a flight of stairs and I'm heaving and huffing, I'm gonna get back in shape. But I refuse to consider in shape or out of shape based on the numerics. I'm gonna do it on how I feel. And I've never slept better. I've never had better sex. I've never been a better man, like physically, than right now, 31. And I tell myself that, like, you know, I want to compete. I want to do all these things. It's time, it's effort, and it's all these things. And one of the big hurdles is I don't want to fucking do that again. No. I don't want to do it again.
I kind of do that. I put on a little bit of weight.
Dude, you look good.
But here's the thing. Like, I didn't have to cut weight for jiu-jitsu. It's strange, the trade-off you have. I told Adam Sella this because he's a good buddy of mine. I said the trade-off for the wisdom is your youth.
Yeah.
So here is better than ever when it comes to the game and looking at it. But it's not there. That's where the TRT was beneficial to some of those fighters. But even now, I have to drop like 8 pounds of walking weight because you got to weigh in with the gi with IBJJF before you compete. And so I got to get my walking weight down because I don't want to cut that water weight. So I'm sitting there holding this gallon of water the other day. I'm like, that's 8 pounds. So, yeah. And the thing is, I don't even eat that bad. So I got to do what I said earlier, find time to do that aerobic work.
I'm glad we had this conversation. I'm glad we had this episode. I want to end on one thing, if you don't mind. It may seem that you and I have complained a lot, but I think what we're trying to do is like constructive criticism to the game, more or less, and maybe just kind of impart some of like the wisdom that we've kind of accumulated over the years. But I will say this without a shadow of a doubt, and I've said it on many podcasts. I've never looked at fighting as a waste of time or like something that I gave up something else for. I am very happy that I wrestled. I'm very happy that I fought because the mental acuity it's given me, the mental fortitude, the ability to handle life. Whenever things are starting to get stressful or whatever, all I think to myself is like, this is so much easier than the shit I've had to put myself through beforehand.
I agree, and I needed it. Who knows what I would have done if it wasn't there. And even at work, there's some younger people there that I work with now. Not that I'm almost the middle-aged guy, and they're like, I dread coming into work, and I just don't want to be here. And I go, I get it. I've been there. I go, what do you do outside of here? I'm like, what time do you get up? She's, I get up at 7:30. I'm like, you get here at 8:30. I go, what do you do afterward? I don't really do much. I'm like, you need an outlet. I said, I don't care if it's playing fucking violin. You don't have to be some CrossFit store. I'm like, you need something because it turns the volume down here. And I go, and the reason some of this upper management here takes this shit so seriously is because they have nothing else.
Well, they also work 12-hour days.
They have nothing else. And I don't mind working. I think we work too much in this country for the wages I'm getting. I know people are lazy and they ruin it for other people. But if I'm spending 10 hours of my day working, that's with a commute, I'm spending a lot of my time doing it.
Do you believe in? I said we were going to end it,
No,
but
go
you
for
bring
it.
up a good point. Forgive me. Do you believe in a 40-hour work week? Because I don't.
I don't. I think, and this sounds really simple, I think you can shave an hour off everyone, 35-hour work week. For every 7 people, you create another job. Also, on top of that,
6-hour work day.
yeah, I don't mind 6, but the corporations will never do that. So that's why I see some of the incentives people have. I don't believe in trickle-down economics. I think all they do is buy back shit and use their own money for other stuff. But the corporations will never go for that because they want people back in the office now because they want to own your life. The ones I work for now, they're so old school. There was a presentation on AI and they were baffled it was even on their phone. They don't know how to convert a file to a PDF or even save it as that. But then you have to be in the office all the time because they have nothing else going on.
Have you ever heard of the saying that for every kid who's working in Visual Basic, there's an elderly person making 6 figures that doesn't know how to open
Dude,
a PDF?
I live it. And don't get me wrong. Individually, everybody I work with, they're good people. I don't think they're bad people. I work with some really cool people, actually. And but a lot of it's old mindsets. So some of them are like, oh, man, I wish I could leave early like you at 4:15. I'm here at 7:30 some days. I ain't leaving early. Also, clients get a hold of me when I leave. I work in advertising. They text me on the weekends. Like, if you thought I needed to be here for everything you did, get me a desktop, and then I'm not doing shit outside of it. But it's all hours. You
work in advertising and you have to go into the office?
Thank you. They have them conditioned in a certain way. Yeah, and like they think if you leave the office,
Are any of your roles and responsibilities tied to the physical location?
No, I can do anything I'm doing there at home. The only thing I would go in there for is some meetings that we don't necessarily need, and to print off a bunch of stuff. That's it.
Hot take. I don't think you need 98% of the meetings we have.
I would agree with that.
I can have them in a 30-second phone call.
Actually, yeah, and most of
I'll
the
even
times,
go as far as to say that most of the emails I get are not needed.
But a lot of it is people, their job titles come with a certain level of importance, so they feel in control.
Middle management.
It is.
You want to know why you need middle management? I used to think that middle management was useless, but you want to know why you need middle management? Whenever you hear about people complaining about middle management, just remember that there's 10 people that need it. There's 10 people that need to be micromanaged. There's 10 people that need to be told specifically put part A with part B to create part C. That's the problem. You have people that can be critical thinkers and that can use what they know to learn what they don't know. But for every one of those, you have 5 people that don't know fucking shit.
Well, I'm going back into where I'm like, I don't fit into many places. I'm pretty direct. So whenever they bring something up, I'm like, oh, that's just emotion. That's not the problem here. And so they finally kind of gotten a little bit used to me, and they kind of appreciate my perspective on things, because I'll tell some of them they're like, oh, they're afraid to leave before 5 o'clock. And I'm like, we're in advertising. The clients will get a hold of you. No one wants to talk to you at that point anyway. You have a laptop. You have kids. Go pick them up. Go take them to the game. And they're like, oh, I wish you could leave early like you. It's like, I'm not leaving early. I'm still working. I have a laptop. I can text message people. I can call people on the way in and out. It's this weird old school mindset that I've run into, because there was a moment one day I was leaving at 4 because I had an appointment, or I had to go pick up my dog from something.
Whatever, yeah.
It doesn't matter, right? So the head of the building on our end comes over to me, and I'm packing up my stuff, and it's 4 o'clock. And to her, if you don't stay till 5, you're not working. And she's like, where are you going? I go, home. And she goes, oh. And I looked at her like, okay. And I went to my manager the next day. I'm like, I'm just going to tell you, I'm not putting up with that shit. It's not her business where I'm going. If you guys don't think I'm doing my job or there's things to correct coaching wise, I'm all for that. Let's have that discussion. But there ain't no shame in me because you feel bad that you're here. We have two different jobs. You're here till 5 because you set your fucking meetings. I have a completely different job than you. You report to people outside of here. I do not. And so I'm like, I'm not having that conversation with them, or I will just be really direct.
Can I say something that's going to anger a lot of people?
Yeah.
If you're quantifying your productive ability by the time you spend working something, you are the most inefficient and stupid person I know.
I think
if you can't do 8 hours worth of work in 6, get better at your job.
It's a jealousy and an envy thing is what it is, because she has to be there. She was.
I think it's a stupidity thing.
Well, they'll complain. Oh, I'm the only one here Friday at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, because you're an idiot.
Yeah, clients don't want to talk
Leave,
to you.
dummy.
Yeah, so that's not my problem. So what I started telling people in the office, and I'm like, look, I've done a lot of things, and I don't pat myself on the back when I talk to you. I don't talk about what I do. Who wants to talk to that guy that talks about himself all the time? But I finally told one of them the other day, I go, look, I'm going to stack money in my savings account.
Yeah, who would want to talk to that guy?
I'm putting money in my savings account, and I'm looking at the office, like faculty office hours. I will be in here from this time to this time unless I have a meeting, and I'm available to reach.
Do you have a laptop?
Yep.
You're always available. You don't even know it.
Yes.
Because if a certain person of a certain title emails or contacts you, you're going to work. That's what I've learned. When I was younger, Jordan, I used to think that they were paying me to be there from 9 to 5. No, what they're paying me for is my skill set at any time. I used to feel bad about my compensation until I realized that if they call me on Christmas morning because some shit needs to get done, I have to do it. So yes, you have to pay me a premium for my time. You're not paying me for my productivity or my intellect. Those are how I got the job. My skill set and my ability to critically think are why I'm here. You're compensating me for my most valuable resource, my time. And if I have to give you 9 to 5 and only 9 to 5, then we're going to talk. But if I now have to commute, well, now you actually have me from 8 to 6 because I got to get there and I got to get back. Now we have to have a different discussion. Now, if you give me the remote work, fair, I'm willing to maybe get compensated a little less because I'm actually not putting in as much time. But when you start talking about like, well, I need to be able to call you at 8 o'clock on a Thursday, fair. I always say there's no such thing as bad jobs, only bad salaries. Yep. You want something, I want money. The only discussion to be had now is where is the meeting point between what you want and how much money I want, and can we make an agreement?
Yeah, see, the model is changing. They just don't want it to. But here's the thing: who's going to
hold on. I will also say this. We also have a generation of kids that are not prepared for work.
Yeah, I agree.
So like, you and I are complaining, but may I go as far as to say, I don't know specifically for you, I guarantee you, none of my employers are bitching about my workload, what I get done, how available I am, my resourcefulness, any of these things. There are people who genuinely want to come in, do the 9 to 5, and they feel entitled to their salary. So like, while I agree with everything you're saying, I also understand why it is the way it is. You are the minority. You are the minority. And you cannot, just like with everything else in life, you cannot make the exception the rule. You're the exception. So all the things that you feel, all the things you're like, why the fuck do I have to do this? It's not you. It's because of everyone else ruining it for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so I've tried to find the balance to not be like, no.
Go fuck yourself.
Well,
and lose your job.
I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do a good job at it. But I don't need to be here for your feelings.
What's your relationship with your direct superior?
My manager's cool. He fights all those fights for me.
No. I'm saying your relationship with him. Do you like each other?
Yeah. Yeah, he's a buddy.
What about your direct superior's direct superior? Do you know each other?
Yeah.
You're good. Don't fucking worry about anybody else. Your boss is
What if that's
boss.
the one that's the issue?
Brother, have a plan B?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And, it is to do what I do. Anywhere I go, I want to be successful. I've proven that. They're already baffled. I was there 6-7 months, won an employee of the month. And they're like, how did you do that? I'm like, I know how to talk to people. But here's the other thing. My strength is I've managed a small business for 8 years. So I know those fights they're dealing with. They go in there and do that corporate shell thing. And I'm like, look, I know your budget's this. I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm going to show you exactly what you're going to get for this. And I'll take them and show them the system. Here's what this money gets you.
Sorry,
Here's what
it's
this
the
money
microphone.
gets
Forgive
you.
me.
Here's what this money gets you. It's up to you, whichever you want. Now we can grow to here, but I know you're dealing with this.
Dude,
and they're like, I had a lady at a small business. She's like, a place came in and pitched me $24,000 a year contract. I'm like, no, I ain't doing that to you. No. I'm like, I've been where you are. Like, you're taking your kids to sports after you close your business for the day. Like, there's just bad people in the well that have just poison the well for everything.
You said, and this is what we were going to end on, if you don't mind me saying. You said earlier that you don't believe in trickle-down economics because so many of these companies have done buybacks. I would make the argument that the difference between capitalism working and capitalism not is the X factor of stockholder. We have become a capitalist society who only values the stockholder and have forgotten about the stakeholder. Think of the biggest business douche you could think of in your head. I'm that guy, Jordan. Outside of this, I'm that motherfucker. I am. However, I have never forgotten what it was like to be poor and broke and have to work your way up. I feel like too many of these people either never had that because of inheritance or forgot it when they got to the top, what it was like to be at the bottom. And what will create equilibrium is in itself capitalism. And that's why I always tell people, I have so many people come up to me like, I'm upset with my pay. I'm upset with my workload. I'm upset with this. And I say, quit, leave. I can't. Well, then that's why they pay you what they pay you. That's why they treat you how they treat you, because you can't leave. Why would I care about you if you can't do anything else? I own you, bitch. When you start telling them, I'm not going to do this, they'll start responding with, well, then we'll fire you. And if your response is, I can't work anywhere else, you're their bitch. But if your response is, I'm not going to accept this and I can work somewhere else, then you're good. The thing that I hate the most about our generation is we get a bad flack for having the average employment lifetime at a company be like, I think it's 2 years now, 2 years roughly.
They did that to themselves.
They did that to themselves. When you eliminate pensions, when you no longer promote based on merit or seniority, when you don't necessarily take care of the people that have been there and are working and understand the intellectual property that they're kind of undertaking, and when you're outsourcing promotions to other companies, other people, because that's what's happening. When you work at a place and you don't get the promotion because they hired someone else for it, that's because someone somewhere else was unhappy and someone told them, take it, bitch. And they said no. Then they got the promotion somewhere else. You should be happy in a weird way. You should be happy where if you don't get the promotion because they outsourced, you should be happy because that's showing you that if you wanted to do the exact same thing, it's possible.
Yep. And the biggest thing, trickle-down economics would work if it was based on altruism, but it's not. So if you look at the wage gap since it first passed in the 80s, how's the wage gap been since the 80s?
Not because of altruism.
No, altruism would make it work because you're investing back in Americans.
I would make the argument that it's intelligence. If you're greedy to the point where all of your labor source is now unhappy with you, you're an idiot, not empathetic. You're an idiot. Productivity is directly scalable to profitability for the individual laborer. If I pay, what makes you happier, a pizza party, more PTO, or more money in your pocket?
PTO or more money.
How much money would I have to pay you to be unhappy? How much money, what is your annual salary for you to hate your life and accept it? My goal as an employer is to find that number and pay you $1 less than that so that you don't hate your life. Or sorry, $1 more than that so you don't hate your life. That's my job as an employer. Now, the calculus of like what is your productivity to profitability, all these other things taken into consideration. But then I would always make the argument that if your business can only sustain itself by paying people something that they don't want to be paid, can't live off of, or any of these other metrics, then you shouldn't be in business. We should not. We have the illusion of capitalism. When you say that trickle-down economics doesn't work, it's because you've never seen it done. Because we don't have a capitalist society. When these big corporations get bailouts, when Boeing can file bankruptcy 2 times in 10 years, when the automotive industry can get a bailout, when the financial industry can get a bailout, but your business can't, that's the illusion of capitalism. We're choosing the winners and losers. It's not a free and open market.
Well, I remember when I worked
at
Cigna Healthcare. They were online talking about most profitable year ever, and the CEO gave himself a raise, and then they sent the whole department that we were at over to India. And then I'm like, okay, so we're going to talk about American jobs here and all this stuff, but then we're going to let companies just do this. And you know what? They go to India, and they're going to mess it up, and they wanted this department to coach the people in India how to do their job. And they got paid per product they did, not hourly, and how much they did right. So when they messed it up, they didn't get paid for it.
Here's the one bad thing about publicly traded companies. When you are graded on a quarterly metric, you stop looking at the long term.
Yep. I deal with that now where I'm at. You have a great year in sales? Okay, cool. Guess what? Better be better next year. Better be better next year. Better be better.
It's unsustainable.
So eventually, it has to crash.
No, it's not even that it has to crash. You can't even be horizontal.
No, it's like
You
can't.
can't just say, hey, we were exactly as profitable as we were last year. But with the rate of inflation, let's say it's 4%. We actually made 4% more money because we're just as profitable, but we haven't had growth or, more profitability. At some point, you have to equilibrium. Let's say you get to like the end game. Because I truly believe that communism leads to capitalism. And if you have pure capitalism, you will ultimately get from, multiple competitors to an oligopoly, to a monopoly, to a dictatorship.
Yeah, I think.
What is the difference between Amazon and 173 nations in this world?
What's that?
What is the difference between Amazon and 173 nations in this world?
Amazon's richer.
They just don't have a physical location.
Well, even like everyone was saying,
so
we
crazy.
should kick it back to the free market. Do you actually think there really is a free market?
There-
Because then all of a sudden you pay one person in Congress to get you some stipends and some kickbacks and something, and then you have a barrier and entry into this, and so you can't have much competition in here because now you own this.
So that's the dichotomy. You hit the nail on the head, and I don't know if you even know it. If you leave people to their own devices, you will eventually get a monopoly, and you don't have capitalism
now, by the way.
But if you get the government too heavily involved, which I would make the argument that we are in now, the government starts picking winners and losers. You're held accountable for your bad decisions, but this company, we're going to bail out because they're too big to fail.
Mm-hmm.
We need in the middle, and that is so hard to do. I would make the argument that all legislation should be in the best interest and freedom of the laborer and the employer. But to the extent that there is an unfair, like we have, forgive me because we've been on this for two and a half hours, but there are literally like government agencies designed to create competition with industries. When T-Mobile wanted to buy Sprint, so T-Mobile, the cell phone carrier, wanted to buy Sprint, one of the things that T-Mobile had to do was at least divest Boost Mobile. Because they're like, hey, there's so many people in the market. And when I say they, I mean by the U.S. government, by the fair trade laws, right? They were like, we need at least so many people in this industry. We can't have you gobbling up one of the main competitors because you're going to create an oligarchy. So one of the things T-Mobile had to do in order to be able to purchase Sprint is divest Boost Mobile to Dish so that there were still technically the same number of players in the field. When have you heard of Boost Mobile recently?
They used to be a UFC sponsor way back in the day, but since then, nothing.
Well, back when they were under T-Mobile. And that's the problem. The problem is on paper, these things can seem adequate, equal. Hey, we had five competitors before, we have 5 competitors now, but not really. And when you do that over the course of time and you financialize every industry, you get to the point where you have people preaching capitalism in a communist state. It's not the government that's running it. It's the industry. It's the industry juggernaut.
Yeah, it's a cartel.
I'm not worried about
cartel. Industry level.
What strikes fear to my heart is not my government. It's who pays them.
Yeah, well, they should all wear sponsors like NASCAR. I mean, how do you get rich in that? Like, it's unbelievable.
Did you see the legislation that just passed the House?
Will they give themselves another raise?
No. No, that they're actually tackling the insider trading. Guess when it takes into effect? 2027. Oh. Guess who's running for re-election in 2024? Nancy Pelosi. Guess when she's going to retire from politics?
They did the same thing with the tax.
Which honestly, can I be honest with you? I'm fine with that. If we can pass legislation that fixes the issues, but the traders want to ride off into the sunset, but it's fixed after they leave, I'm willing to swallow that pill. If term limits takes grandfathering in the current administration, I'm fine with that. Vivek Ramaswamy had the best retort to this. He's like, hey, term limits, but if you are a part of the legislative body that signed this into law, you don't have term limits. Over the course of the next 30 years, that problem will take care of itself, but the legislation is underlying and will proceed long after their death. I'll take the same thing with insider trading, because that's what it is. Insider trading in Congress. If Nancy Pelosi wants to insider trade until the day she dies, I'll allow that to happen if she will vote that the day she dies, it can no longer happen.
It would have been a very
And
interesting.
they have to tattoo traitor on their forehead.
It would have been a very interesting timeline if this past weekend's events were different and they had to put another candidate up for Biden and now put up another candidate on the Republican side, what the interests would have nominated for both parties.
Jordan, you just... Matt, I'm sorry.
No, we don't have to...
No,
we don't have to
we
talk about
are.
that in general.
No, we are. This will be our first
if both...
3-hour podcast.
And this late in the game, if both nominees would have had to been replaced, who do the interests nominate?
Nikki Haley. Oh, my God. Will you give me 2 minutes? Let's say for austerity's sake, that bullet hit his head. There was one Republican nominee still in the race, basically hoping that the frontrunner would be left off, and that's Nikki Haley. The Republican National Convention is happening right now, and I believe that Donald Trump has already exceeded the number of votes he needs to be the nominee. 2 days ago, that could have easily been Nikki Haley because she was the only person still running. You want to talk about a threat to democracy. There's never been a bigger threat to democracy than one bullet that grazed his ear, because then you would have had the people's choice taken away from them and instead an industry plant. Vice versa. I'm going to go on a limb here and say something a little crazy. If you think for a second that Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee, you're a fool. I don't think he gets to election night. I really don't. I don't think he steps down. I had a lot of people saying to me, Arion, they're going to try to kill Trump again. They're going to try to kill Trump again. I was like, yeah, most likely. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if you think in the year of our Lord, 2024, a 20-year-old can get on a rooftop and shoot at 150 yards at the sitting nominee for a major Democratic Party, I question your judgment. I question your critical thinking abilities. Not in this day and age. I'm sorry. If you think that the powers that be find difference between red and blue and not power, you're a fool. I don't think there's a coincidence that this event, the stipulations that happened, were so close to the Republican National Convention. I don't think Biden is in charge of this. I think he's just as in danger as Trump is. Because if there's anything U.S. history has proven, it's that the deep state is not afraid to kill its own president.
Well, JFK. I always felt like when Obama got elected in, they pulled him into a back room and been like, okay, now here's what's really going to happen. And because there was a lot of things that we thought were going to change after that didn't, because a lot of gridlock.
He got the Nobel Peace Prize for winning an election and then proceeded to bomb more people than any president ever.
Yeah, I mean...
Granted, he did have drone technology that was afforded to him. I'm just saying. The irony in this.
If people's pockets are going to get lighter, then stuff changes. They don't like that. I just
JFK
wonder how much can actually be changed.
When did JFK die? When was he assassinated? 1 month after he said he was going to pull 100,000 troops out of Vietnam for the next 4 months until all U.S. troops were out.
That, and he pissed off the mafia, and he talked about secret societies. Like, there was a lot in there.
He started talking about shit that he needed. But most importantly, though, 1 month after he attacked what? The military industrial complex. When you have a $1.15 trillion bankroll, what do you want? You want to make sure that cash cow ain't going anywhere.
Well, even if
what happens to Donald Trump a week and a half after he says that his first day in office, he was going to cut funding to Ukraine and that he will reinstate the Abraham Accords to bring back peace in the Middle East? I think Jared Kushner, there are talks about Jared Kushner being an asset to all these other states. All I know is Jared Kushner had no prior experience of being Secretary of State, and then he proceeded to create the closest thing in our lifetime to peace in the Middle East through the Abraham Accords. Why? Because it's in everybody's best interest. How do I stay friends with Jesse Finney? I never anticipate that he will do something that's not in his best interest. How did all these countries stay in line? Let's all make money. Let's all prosper. Let's all grow. Let's all gain power. As long as everybody's interests align, we can find peace. Prosperity of humanity. The prosperity of humanity should be everyone's goal. Russian, Chinese, American, whoever you are. But when it's not, I question the judgment of that leadership. I understand that there are nations for a reason. And if there's anything that's stopped or prevented World War III, it's been globalization, not not globalization. All I'm saying is we live in a time where my father used to tell me about stories of like communism and like the Iron Curtain falling and the 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 Cold War was just an anxiety filled era. And when that Iron Curtain, when Gorbachev finally said, okay, like we'll knock down the wall and all these other things, it lifted humanity to prosperous heights. And it's almost like we want to cage ourselves again, not we, but powers that be want to cage humanity and keep the prosperity. And that's unsustainable. So what do? You either put yourself in a position where humanity ends itself, or you maintain the status quo and you keep the prosperity. I think we're in a very tumultuous time, and not just our history, but human history, because America is the juggernaut of the world. Wherever we go, we lead our species. And we need to choose the next 6 months very carefully. We also need to be very careful of the words we use, the rhetoric we say, the actions we take. If the prosperity of humanity is not your top concern, I question your judgment at this time specifically, because we've never been so close to our mutually assured destruction.
Well, you could argue that's already happened in human history. They have like pyramids under the ocean. So what took out that civilization? You know, it's
aliens.
That's an interesting
Cow
show.
farts.
But like, I don't know. We couldn't be the first iteration of humans on this planet. But the thing is, like, who's actually running the show? But it's very strange right now because if you're a moderate, you don't have a candidate.
Yeah, you do.
Who?
RFK Jr.
That's not a real candidate. If he can get on the debate
stage... If enough people think like that, he's not.
Yes. If he gets on the debate stage like Ross Perot, okay, real candidate.
They'll never let that
Exactly.
happen.
So it's not a real candidate.
Yeah, I would even make the argument that I have a buddy, Greg Tabber. He's been on the podcast twice. We've talked about RFK Jr. extensively, third-party candidacy, independency, libertarianism. I sent him a text today. I was like, it's over. Trump's going to win. We're now just arguing about the gap.
It's very strange, though, because on one hand, you have what's going on in the schools, which is I have a master's in education. And my best friend's daughter, 7 years old, went to school, and they asked her what she identified as. And I'm like, when I was 7 years old, I was worried about recess.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, I don't want any portion of government to dominate, because then bad shit happens.
You need equilibrium.
If there is this nationalism from religious people trying to take back over, and I get it, hard times are tough, people are getting more religious, but if you put them all in government, what countries have put religion in their government and it's worked out really well? Look what happened in Iran.
Well, the problem is conservatives are, you know what I say about Democrats and conservatives? They're both hypocrites.
Yeah, they are, because they want to control your lives, but then they want freedom.
But in different ways. They
Yeah.
want to control your life in different ways. Conservatives want freedom in terms of finances and economic prosperity. Liberals want freedom in the sense of my life choices and my government not getting involved in my personal affairs. Mm-hmm. But then the liberals want to, take from the wealthy and give back to the needy, while the conservatives want to essentially control who you have in your bed. It's when we start living and let living, and remember that the government that governs least governs best. I think we have genuine prosperity because we believe in the ingenuity and the productivity and the innate value that all humans genuinely have in their souls. When we believe in that again and stop looking for a higher entity to give us, and I'm not saying higher entity as like a God, because I am religious. I do believe in God. But I'm saying I don't believe in Amazon to fix my problems. I don't believe in the president. Even if Trump gets elected, what does that do? It's the administration, it's the local and municipal politics, it's education. I can't get a teacher on this podcast. I cannot get a teacher, a public school teacher, on this podcast. And I even tried to entice them and be like, listen, I normally don't do this, but like I'll tell you the questions I want to ask beforehand. And like you can tell me the ones you don't want to answer. And I'm not going to make this like a softball conversation, but like if you give me a little ground, I'll give you a little ground kind of thing, right? Like give me like 4 hard questions instead of 8 and come onto the podcast. I cannot get a single public school teacher on the podcast.
And you know,
wanna know why? They're all scared of retaliation.
Yeah, they will get it.
They want to talk,
no matter
but
what.
they can't.
It's just, and I've tried to explain this to people, because I was hoping DeSantis would run, because I like some of the stuff he does, like where he had the the social media ban till you're 14 or 16, unless the parent signs off. There's certain things the parent should have conversations for. But the thing about it is, it's some of the stuff I've seen, and a lot of it's been TikTok, because now if you have a child on TikTok, they can get targeted by, how do I say this correctly? They can get targeted by people that your kids are not ready to have conversations with.
You do that on all social media, though.
Yes, but like
that's why I agree. By the way, with the banning of until a certain age, not because I believe that the government should get into the market, but because the government should always have a responsibility to protect children.
So whenever we were in school, there was 2 kids that we grew up with in elementary school. It turns out later on we found out they were gay. We didn't even know.
Yeah.
I don't know that we would have cared. I mean, things are different later. We didn't know, but if they would have sat in and told us all what this is, and then I'm trying to tell some of these people, like, the reason these people vote for Trump is because they see the conversations they're having with their kids that you're trying to normalize. You're
radicalizing.
You're gonna have drag queen story hour to kids. Well, it's the parents that take them there. Okay, but there's an agenda there because you're normalizing something, and to a kid that's becoming normal, they're not ready to have that conversation. Now, look, if there's a unique child in the classroom, hey kids, Eric here is a little different than the rest of you, and we're going to explain why. Then educate, but don't throw it down their faces and all that.
I also don't think that you should even have the conversation. If they're gay, let them be gay.
Well, no, I mean, like, in the instance of where you do have a child that would be considered trans, like, you can obviously tell something to all of them, like, hey, here's how we're going to speak to this.
Hot take, I don't think that has anything to do with the school.
Yeah, well, maybe it shouldn't, but the thing is,
and if there's bullying or involved or anything like that, then the school can step in. But until then, like, when our math scores, when our reading scores, when our kids are actually genuinely prepared for adulthood in the marketplace and everything that comes with it, then we can start talking about educating them on Black history and trans and all this other stuff. Get the core shit out of the way. Can my kid read? Can my kid write? Does my kid have social skills? Because that's one of the big reasons why they're in schools, so that they can learn how to interact with other humans. We saw that in COVID. Can they critically think? Do they have basic competency for arithmetic? I'm not even talking about long division or like algebra. Just if I told them divide 100 by 2, please say 50. Please say 50. Yeah. If they can do that, then I'm willing to have the conversation about drag queen story hour and trans kids and all this other shit. Until you can get the basics done, what the fuck are you doing? This is my same competency. I posted a reel about this. I am not opposed to taxation. I think it's my patriotic duty to pay for the services that I benefit from. But when I look to my left and I look to my right and I don't see any services I'm benefiting from, why the fuck am I paying taxes?
Or how many level taxes? Paycheck tax, housing tax, car
What's
tax.
the number?
Yeah.
What's the adequate number? How much do you want to give to the government? Like, if you could pick a number, what's the number you would give to the government? Because right now my number's around like 12%.
I would say, if I had to do a flat tax, I would say let's go what the church does and do 10% tithe.
Yeah, tithe.
10%.
I'd be fine with 10%. Like if you took 10% of all of my revenue, or not revenue from the businesses, but like take home pay, 10%, I'd be okay with that. Right now, dude, I pay like an effective tax rate of like 30%. And I'm looking at my wife and I'm just like, what the fuck? And that's just federal, Jordan. That's just federal. 1% for the city. I think it's like 7 or 8% for the state. When I look at my paycheck, I almost want to cry.
Yeah, I did the same thing recently. I make more money now, and I was like, I got taxed my old paycheck. I'm like, that's some bullshit.
And once again, I bring up this. I do not mind if you taxed me 30%. But I look at the streets and they're flawless. No potholes. Crime is at an all-time low. Education at an all-time high. There's prosperity and growth, and humanity is in abundance around me. Okay, my money is being well spent. But when none of the basic norms and criteria are being taken care of, now I'm the idiot to pay you. Now I'm the idiot.
Now it's now you're paying for something you're not getting.
Jordan, we have been on.
Yeah,
I
figured this was going to happen though.
This is now the longest podcast we've ever had by a good 30 minutes. We were on for about 2 hours and 42 minutes. Jordan Dowdy, I wanted to say 2 things. Number 1, thank you for being on the podcast. I know that we hadn't talked in a long time, but I felt like we just picked up the baton right from when it was dropped. And 2, I appreciate your transparency and being able to talk about the hard topics at the beginning you got a little emotional there, and I appreciate you just being able to kind of formulate your thoughts and articulate them for us. But then also, you were not afraid to go to any category, talk about anything, and I do appreciate that as a host. It makes my job a whole lot easier, so thank you.
You're welcome. As you get older, you don't really have anything to hide. You don't have to make up a story if you're just honest. So
Yeah.
you just say it like it is. And the reason I didn't even know we were going to go to that about my friend and everything I was dealing with. But the reason I kind of wanted to touch on it when I got it, somebody else needs to hear that. May not be today, maybe in a week. Maybe someone's relating with it, maybe someone's dealing with it now, but it's sometimes you just need a professional to help you sort through some things, and then you're better off for it.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Jordan, thank you, sir.
thank you.